All right, we're going to call this meeting to order of the Board of Supervisors, February 6th. Can we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Supervisor Zaragoza?
Here.
Supervisor Long?
Here.
Supervisor Bennett?
Here.
Supervisor Parks? Here. Supervisor Foy?
Here. We will do the Pledge of Allegiance. Supervisor Long, will you read?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have the minutes for the Board of Supervisors Special Districts of January 23rd.
Chair Foy, a note, just a quick change on page 3 that should refer to the Tubbs fire in Santa Rosa, not Santa Rosa Valley. And with that, approve the minutes.
Okay. We have that with that change. All right. We have a motion and
I'll second once it gets on the screen.
The mover? Supervisor Parks?
Supervisor Parks did, yes.
Supervisor Long?
Everybody vote? All right, and then we will go to our agenda review. Mr. Powers.
Thank you, Chair Foy. Item 14, Healthcare Agency VCMC. Approval of the First Amendment to the agreement with Santa Barbara Perinatal Medical Group. Board letter and Exhibit 1 have been submitted. Item 15, Healthcare Agency VCMC. Approval of the First Amendment with Pediatric Subspecialty Network. A board letter and Exhibit 1 have been submitted. Item 19, Supervisor Bennett. Adoption of a policy position opposing the repeal of SB1. A PowerPoint has been submitted. Item 24, RMA Planning. Public hearing regarding adoption of a resolution of the non-coastal zoning ordinance. A revised board letter has been submitted. Item 31, CEO's Office approval to appoint Lynn Krieger as an extra help employee following her retirement. Comment letters from Diana Casey and Renee Ayu have been submitted. And then I've had a request to hear item 35 before item 24, which is at 11 o'clock. I'll repeat that. So to hear item 35 before item 24.
35.
Move approval as
closed session.
revised.
Okay. So we have a motion. Any other thing on the agenda? Second?
Motion button's not working.
There we go.
You're just not clicking.
One more example of Peter Foy's leadership.
That's right. Keep that machine broken.
You gotta vote.
Do we vote? There we go. His vote machine works. All right, we're going to move to our moment of inspiration. I think it's kind of a really cool one. We have, I'd like to welcome Brian Laughlin. Brian, back here to the board meeting this morning. Maybe you guys heard of what Brian has done. Brian's a farrier, and he's also one of the many civilian heroes in our recent fire. And Brian, explain why we call you the hero. So,
well,
I love it.
I don't know if we take it that far, but good morning, everybody. My name, again, is Brian Laughlin. As you said, I'm a professional farrier. I'm a horse trainer, cowboy, if you will. I was born and raised in a small town of Alpal, California, in the Central Valley. About 300 people. I graduated high school with a class of 10 people. So when I say small, I mean small. That's where I got my love and my passion for animals, and especially horses. Being raised around them, you know, there's a great love and a desire to see their safety. So it was only natural, being, you know, a veteran, raised that way, that for me to spring into action and just help save, not just help the people, but it was more about the animals. It just came kind of natural. You know, one of the things that I saw during all that was the way other people came to help. You know, I saw complete strangers, people that knew nothing about this person or that person, but they all just kind of came in to help each other too. But again, it wasn't for us as people, it was for the animals. Because the animals can't help themselves. Without us going in, someone like myself to go in, where I kind of get in trouble because I'll cross the police lines. When they tell me you can't go, I just kind of wave to them as I'm going by and saying, I got to be up there because these animals need me. So off I go. And as you can see in some of the pictures, if I can work this thing, those are kind of some of the situations that we're going into to help pull these animals out. That's just me up on the ranch. That was me as I was pulling horses out of the fire, trying to get them into safety. That was me loading them into my trailer. And this particular horse right here was the very first horse that I got my hands on as I went into the fire. And where I pulled him out of, let's see if it's on here. It's not. But what I pulled him out of, I went into a burning barn where the barn was on fire. And that horse was on fire at the moment when I got him, and I had to have the firemen douse him with water so that I could get him out and get him into safety. And from the same spot, I pulled 10 more horses out of that same area, out of that burning barn, through the flames and the smoke. And I remember talking to the fireman when they were asking me if I could get him, and I remember I looked at the fireman and I said, how am I supposed to go into that like how I'm dressed and look at you? And he just looked at me and said, well, we got to do something. I said, you're right. And off I went. But it's times like that we just do what we got to do, and that concern for our own personal safety kind of goes downhill, knowing that I just have that feeling I'm going to be okay, and those horses, they got to get out. And, so it was just a beautiful thing to see so many people so willing to just be there to help in so many different ways. It wasn't about politics. It wasn't about what you look like, what color you were, where you came from. It was just, I'm here, what can I do? And it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. I mean, I'm getting choked up just talking about it. It's just absolutely amazing. But the sad part is, in our everyday lives, we lose that. We lose that passion to help other people, to help other animals, just for the good, just for the simple good of things. And to me, that's a heartbreaking thing. And speaking of passion, I believe that true service is when our joy is combined with what the world really needs. That's what true service is, when we can just take that joy and be able to give it just because it's needed, and to do something that we're truly passionate about. That moment that you do something that you're not passionate about is that moment you become extraordinarily ordinary.
It's a good saying.
And, I've known people who have these big fancy titles that make no impact in this world. But I've known people with absolutely no titles, people had no idea who they were, that made huge impacts, that just can change so many lives. And that's just an amazing thing. And find my other card here. And it's just, sometimes the universe presents a need for something to happen, for somebody to do something. And it's in those times that I've seen some of the most amazing things, where people just spring into action without thought, without care. The universe says, I need you. And somebody says, here I am.
That's right.
It gives you faith. It gives you hope and lets you know that this world is still filled with beautiful, beautiful people. Because we all know there's a lot of ugliness, a lot of hate, a lot of horrible things happening. But to look around and see so much beautiful amidst all that, it makes me happy to be here. It makes me happy to be an American. And it makes me happy to have the opportunity to save these beautiful animals and to be able to do that every day of my life.
That's great.
I mean, how much better does it get?
Right. Thank you. You know, there's no question that tragedy, you get to see the greatness of people, and we saw that throughout, and you're one of them, and saving animals like this is tremendous. Going in and risking your life, but to save these animals and all the other people that joined you and all the other things that were going on around this county because of that. You're right. It just shows you there's a lot of good in people.
Absolutely.
And we get the opportunity to see this. So thank you for coming out this morning and sharing that with us.
Absolutely, you
Really
bet. Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to go to our consent items. Oh, I'm sorry. You have something, Mr. Powers?
Thank you, Chair Foy. Yes, if it's possible, I would appreciate it if we could pull consent item 15 for a presentation.
Right. Okay. So we'll pull 15, and let's do that right now if we could.
So I would invite up Dr. Wong. We're joined by Dr. Wong, our medical director of VCMC, as well as our chief of surgery, Dr. Javier Romero. And they have a special guest with them they're going to introduce.
Hello, Dr. Wong. Good to see you.
Good morning, Chair Foy, Mr. Powers, supervisors. First of all, I just want to continue to thank you for the ongoing support that you give to the hospital, to the healthcare agency, for the work that we do. This morning, I wanted to actually highlight a particular item that's before your board. It really is meant to serve the needs of particularly the children, the infants, and the adolescents in our community. Before your board is a motion that will add a full-time services of a pediatric surgeon to Ventura County. This will be the first of its kind. In partnership with Dr. Tamir Keshin, Dr. Charlie Stoller, we've been working with them on the recruitment of adding a third pediatric surgeon, which will be based here in Ventura County, will serve our patients and keep our patients here in the county and not need services outside. It really continues to highlight how the expertise is here in the county and not needing to go outside the county for their needs. Dr. Romero and I are really proud to introduce Dr. Charles Stoller, who is partners with Dr. Keshin, one of our pediatric surgeons. I'd like to introduce him. He is someone that we've brought over from the East Coast. Originally did his medical school training at Georgetown, completed his surgical residency at University of Illinois, Chicago, then his pediatric surgery training in Washington, D.C. at the Children's Hospital. Served for many years on faculty and chair at the Columbia University for their pediatric surgery department. Recently was awarded by the American Academy of Pediatrics Mentorship Award for his efforts there. Recruited him over to the West Coast and has been with us for the last several years now. Dr. Stoller?
Good morning, and thank you very much for this opportunity to speak with you. I would bet that a few of you have had an opportunity to meet a pediatric surgeon before, so it's nice to meet you all. I hope it's mutual. I represent an arcane, unusual surgical subspecialty that's central to all of children's care. In the United States, there's about 450 pediatric surgeons currently in active practice. Most are affiliated with a major children's hospital. We're fortunate and blessed to have 3 in our metropolitan area, both especially in the Ventura and lesser so in Santa Barbara. And it's our pleasure to do this because we serve children. This is all about children and keeping children intact with their families. And because we're able to provide specialty care here in your gorgeous new hospital and facility, we can keep families together and avoid the need to send them elsewhere, number one. Number two, because of our effort to build children's services in Ventura County, pediatric surgery is central, because without pediatric surgery, it's not possible to have neonatal intensive care, pediatric intensive care, pediatric trauma, pediatric general medicine, residencies in pediatrics, and residencies in family practice. So yes, there are very few of us, but we're very central to the effort to develop children's services. So because of the advocacy, especially of Kim Milstein and Brian Wong and Javier Romero, and many of yourselves were able to begin and develop this service. It was begun many years ago, actually, by Bill Kincannon as an ad hoc service. Then Dr. Keshen came out here. Then my wife made me move out here because she had it with New York City. By the way, we have a horse in New York City. I know I was just really struck by Mr. Laughlin's comments. We have a horse in Forest Park, Forest Hills, Queens. It's a Golden Palomino barrel racing champion that if you would like a horse, Mr. Laughlin, if you'd like another horse, thing's a money pit. But we came out here because my wife bought a house and said she's had it with New York, and it's been our pleasure to live out here. We didn't know about mudslides and fires. But more importantly, as I said, this is an opportunity to develop children's specialty services where they can be cared for, where they live, where their families live, in a very sensitive and gorgeous building. If you haven't had a chance to see the new hospital, it'll be our pleasure to show it to you. I hope many of you have seen it, but this is the only pediatric intensive care unit in Ventura County. It's one of only 2 neonatal intensive care units in Ventura County. It's the only pediatric trauma service in Ventura County. So it's time to take good advantage of it. It's our pleasure and our opportunity to show our appreciation for you all for supporting this activity. So thank you very much.
I have a text here from your wife that says this is your last move.
By the way, when we built the house, she said she's going out of the house feet first. So you're absolutely right, Mr. Bennett. Absolutely right. Thank you. Any questions or comments I can help you with?
Just welcome, Doctor. I think it's important that you're joining a good staff, and I'm sure that staff is really happy to see you here too. So welcome to Ventura County.
Thank you very much. Just as a final, I'll tell you, I've worked in many healthcare systems. In New York, we organized ourselves around almost 16 different healthcare systems. What you have here at the county is one of the most friendly, physician-friendly, administration-friendly systems I've ever worked with. It's such a pleasure to see that kind of partnership and that kind of support. It's really unusual. It's refreshing when everybody's on the same page and everything sort of lines up and does the right thing. It's just, I can't begin to tell you how much I appreciate the synergy that I've come to enjoy working here.
And I'm sure you love the weather too.
It does not suck. No. Thank you very much.
Dr. Romero, you have something? No? And I think, Dr. Wong, too, and maybe, Doctor, you know this, I think we have a lot of our children having to leave and go out of the county, right, for all these services? And
Absolutely, yeah. We've looked at OSHPD data, which shows where the zip codes of patients are and where they end up with surgeries, and we're seeing a lot of children that end up being operated on in the LA County area that have their home here in Ventura County. So that's really what we're trying to address.
Yeah, and
trying
that's
to keep these kids where they belong.
Keep them where they are, their families, and all the stress of having to go down there, be with my kid, and all their things. So this is tremendous. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Powers, for bringing this, and so we get the opportunity to hear this like this. And thank you for all you guys doing. So, and all the compliments about the hospital. Spent lots of money, and it's coming out just like we thought. So
time for return on investment, as they say.
Yeah, very good return. So thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Is there anything else anybody has on the consent items? Okay.
So comment, the comment the doctor made about the atmosphere here is not an accident. It's been great leadership that's caused that to happen and stuff.
So you can't make a second, and I can't make a vote. Oh, not with my finger anyway. I love it. She's just messing with us down there. Okay, we're going to go to public comments. I got one card. Lamont Pearson. Sir. We have, we're going to go 3 minutes today with our comments. 3 minutes.
It'd be nice if you gave me 5.
Yeah, we're just changing it for 3. Thank you.
We're starting.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Good morning. I want to share with you a few things that I've received in the mail from the county's end. Apparently, the county lawyers, they don't want to represent themselves in the courtroom. They outsource to a law firm, McEwen and Harbor in Los Angeles. This is my family, okay? I want to make it abundantly clear, because apparently these lawyers don't understand. They're trying to stop a lawsuit that I've brought against the county for putting me imprisoning me falsely and messing with my family, okay? They want to say that their lawsuit wasn't received in a timely sense, but excuse me, I'm in the middle of being prosecuted. 8 months, I might add you, from the Ventura County District Attorney's Office, Gregory Totten, okay? And Greg, it will come back to you, okay? Because this is ridiculous. So they don't understand why a lawsuit is being brought for them, okay? This right here is a multi-million-dollar lawsuit that I brought against the county, all right? You guys, you messed with me. And apparently, you stand by these attorneys. So, there's a ruling that Judge Vincent O'Neill is going to need to make in 3 days. That's at 8:15 on, or not 8:15, but it's going to be, it was 8:30 on February 9th. Okay. I want my 12 jurors. I want this county to hear everything. I want the people to hear what's been done to me. And it's ridiculous that there's a lawyer trying to stop that from happening. There was a bunch of lawyers that wanted to pull me in court and try to prosecute me. Now there's a bunch of lawyers trying to represent them to stop me from speaking to the people. Does it make any sense to you? Hello. 3 days. I want 12 jurors to hear what happened to me. This county is not going to shut me up. So I'm suing the government because these lawyers don't understand that. They want to say, oh, please, Judge, please, don't let him try to prosecute us. But no, wait a second. We were trying to prosecute him for 8 months. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Beautiful family.
Yes.
Thank you. I was going to die for it every day.
Thanks.
Gregory Totten messed up.
All right. Let's go to board comments. Linda, you want to go first?
Sure. Was able to attend the Southern California Association of Governments meeting, SCAG, last week, where Mayor Garcetti was the speaker to our regional council. And also attended a meeting as your representative on the Los Angeles Community Choice Energy, which has a new name, which doesn't have the word Los Angeles in it anymore. It is now the Clean Power Alliance of Southern California, CPA. And I know that we're working to see that we can get more renewable energies and at a lower cost for our residents. Really pleased to see so many cities in our county, I think all but one, either in or about to become in. So that will make up almost a third of this Joint Powers Association. I've also heard of cities and some counties that are actually requiring in new buildings that solar panels be installed. And I thought that was a pretty forward-thinking effort to see that where we have the ability to have solar energy in California, particularly Southern California, there's lots of potential there, that might be something we want to take a look at in the future. I also attended the Thousand Oaks Elks Lodge their 41st annual Law Enforcement and Firefighter Appreciation Program. I feel like I've gone to all 41, but not quite. And that evening, we honored Deputy Travis Neat of the Ventura County Sheriff's Department and also Captain Kenny Capin with the Ventura County Fire Department. I also, along with Supervisor Long, attended the Cal State Channel Islands Site Authority and was pleased to find out that after probably, I would guess, 8 years of back and forth, Mr. Powers stepped in and we were able to get an agreement, a negotiated agreement regarding some redevelopment agency pass-through funds. There had been a dispute on those property tax funds that went on for quite some time, and it was nice to see that resolved and behind us now. So thank you, Mr. Powers, for that. And I will also ask that we close in honor of the people on this list. And that concludes my comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Supervisor Bennett?
Thank you. I'd like to ask the board to adjourn in memory of the people on this list. I want to call out Ernie Golveson. He and his wife have been very active members in the Ventura community. The homeless count is coming up on Thursday, February 22nd, and the Ventura County Continuum of Care is seeking 300 volunteers. So if you're out there and you want to participate in the homeless count this February 22nd, please contact Jennifer Harkey at 658-4342. If you're listening to this, staff 658-4342. And volunteers are needed to be trained and go out in their community on that morning and try to count and canvass the homeless people in their particular area. So everybody would appreciate your support with that. And the final thing I just want to call attention to the board. Recovery from the Thomas fire still continues to move at a robust pace here, and our county staff continues to knock it out of the park. The Saturday meeting that we had at Poinsettia Pavilion at 9 o'clock was standing room only, really well attended. I had a ton of people say how much they appreciated getting the information they got. It's completely different information than had been out before. Then the insurance commissioner came down, and our staff was there at that, and we had that meeting. Then on top of that, our staff has scheduled 5 other meetings around the burn area. That's all the way from the Santa Clara Valley to out by La Conchita to help people get themselves ready for specific flooding and mud flow and debris flow risk in their particular area. To give you an example, they have 3 different meetings scheduled in the Ojai Valley because there's 3 high-risk areas, and they have a separate meeting for each of those areas. So if you want to be an elected official and look good, be the supervisor in District 1 where we have all of these emergencies and you've got a professional staff like we have here in Ventura County to make you look good. As staff just continues to knock it out of the park week after week, and I joke about that, but our citizens are genuinely really starting to appreciate government service in a way that many of them were skeptical about before. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Supervisor Long?
I would definitely agree with Supervisor Bennett's comments on the Thomas fire. It's been amazing to see all of those stepping forward to look out for our community. And even with the insurance commissioner, Dave Jones, coming down, making sure that we have the maps right, making sure we have our flood control, making sure that FEMA and SBA are at our doorsteps for our community is really important. So I just want to say thank you. We have the new disaster Cal Fresh flyers that are out now. There's just so many different ways, and I want to make sure that people are still going to the Thomas Fire VenturaCountyRecovers.org to get the most information that you can about all the different items. There are a lot of things, and we are asking that for FEMA that you do register, whether you need it or not for the disaster, but you never know. So there's a deadline for that, and if you can come. I had the opportunity to speak at the CSAC Executive Committee Leadership Forum and speak in regards to the efforts of our staff and our community, and they were in awe. I was on a panel along with a gentleman from the Oroville spillway and from the Santa Rosa and Napa fires, and we all had very similar stories, unfortunately. Ours is the biggest in the California state, so they wanted to hear all about ours, and I appreciate the opportunity to share it with them. I'd also like to shout out that it is Mike Powers' birthday today. Did anyone know? I'm really good at that one, so happy birthday.
Are you going to have one of those big cakes again?
Where's the cake? Yeah, right. That's what they want to know. Where's the cake?
With all the busy times, it's easy to not say that, but I just wanted to say thank you. And I adjourn on those on this list. Thank you.
Supervisor?
Yeah, and also I want to thank Supervisor Bennett. You're absolutely right. With the staff, it's just outstanding. In fact, this morning I was over at the Regional Defense Plan meeting, and I met Jeff Pratt on the way over, and he was telling me they had standing room only, some 250 to 300 people there at the poinsettia, getting information, from our staff. So, and I also heard Jeff, on the radio, him and Kevin, at KBTA, and they did an outstanding job too. So, we have really, really good staff, and thank you for sharing that. One other thing that I'd like to share is that this last week I had the opportunity to speak to the Cub Scouts Pack 3234 over at Hollywood Beach School, and these children are 6 to 10 years old, really outstanding, smart young kids, So I want to thank Rachel from your CEO's office. She invited me over, and these children are just outstanding. They're asking questions about what's an agenda, and I asked the kid, what's an agenda? And he ran right down the agenda. He says, do you know what a supervisor is? Yes, he's a boss. Don't believe he say that. But no, it was really, really great to see those kids. Also, I attended the Ventura County Women's Political Council annual meeting, and Chief Justice of the State of California, Tanny Cantil, excellent speaker. She was really, really outstanding, and there was quite a few young ladies at that meeting that got invited to attend that here at the Pierpont Inn in Ventura. And also attended the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Oxnard in Port Hueneme. I was invited to judge, the Youth of the Year for Ventura County. 5 outstanding young youth, they were these kids were just outstanding. They made presentations on just trying to be that Youth of the Year. And this one young lady just did an outstanding job. Her name was Valeria Virgin. She's from Hueneme High School. Excellent presentation, and she won a $10,000 scholarship, for the university, and she'll be competing in Sacramento, and hopefully maybe for the National Boys and Girls Club Youth of the Year. And also attended a citizenship fair put by SCIU in Colonia for individuals to apply for citizenship. And I was there about 9:30. By that time, they had probably about 75 people already signed up to become citizens, here of the United States of America. And I'd like to adjourn in memory of the folks on this list.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Thank you.
Yes. There are 2 items that I forgot to announce. One was the Fillmore Piru Groundwater Sustainability Agency. We're having our budget workshop this Wednesday at the Veterans Hall in Fillmore. I wanted to make sure that was shared. And also, I want to make a point to say thank you very much to all those that put together the Thomas Fire Festival benefit that was on Saturday. There is an outpouring amount of love and care and sponsorship to put on that event. I just read that they raised over $700,000. They're still taking donations, and you can go to their website to see. But it was amazing how everyone was there supporting each other, and I just wanted to reach out and say thank you very much because it was an honor to be there.
Thank you. Appreciate you doing that. And I want to adjourn the memory of people on this list. And also, we've heard some great comments about the fire and some of the stuff. Supervisor Long and Mr. Powers and I had the opportunity to sit with the insurance commissioner in a small meeting with his staff. none of this stuff happens by happenstance. It happens under great leadership, and the insurance commissioner himself had said, you guys are so much further. We were getting all these other complaints calling our office. We didn't get that. We were, as he had said, right, we did not get any of that. And it was great to hear that, what did you guys do, you know, kind of, and it was good. And I got to commend Mr. Powers on his leadership, and Matt Carroll and their whole staff about getting out. The communication is what he talked about. It was out there where they weren't getting that. People were up in Santa Rosa and some of the other parts around the state. So that was, it was great to hear right out of the commissioner's mouth of what he had said. And I just want to commend Mr. Powers and his foresight about going after this, and Matt willing to take on that leadership role and do that. So congratulations on what you did do, and the comments from the commissioner. So I appreciate that. And Mr. Powers, your comments?
Thank you, Chair Foy. Just real quick on the Kelsey Channel Islands agreement. Thank you so much, Supervisor Parks. And I really want to also recognize the County Counsel's Office. Part of the issue on this was the complexity of some of the legal issues. But Leroy and Rhonda McCaig from County Council were just essential in helping bring this deal together. So I just did want to acknowledge them. We've all seen the flu epidemic that's hitting us nationwide, and we're no different here locally. And so Supervisor Long, I think, made a great request to have Dr. Levin, our Public Health Director Officer, come give us a report, as well as Rigo Vargas, our Public Health Director. So thank you very much for being here this morning.
Good morning. Chairman Foy, members of the board, Mr. Powers, happy birthday. I'm Dr. Robert Levin, your health officer. Thank you for the opportunity to update you about the influenza. This flu has lasted 6 weeks instead of the normal 2 weeks. A second smaller but significant wave of influenza B followed the first wave of influenza A. The number of influenza deaths to date is 37 in our county. In the past 10 years, the most deaths we've seen in Ventura County has been the 15 deaths associated with the swine flu of 2009-2010. 37 deaths this year, 15 deaths that year. Only 6 of these 37 deaths have been in people under 65 years of age, and there's been no one under 43 years of age. While the average number of deaths each flu season in the United States is 37,000 people, this year the CDC predicts that it will be at least 75,000. Both the influenza A and B that are circulating now are covered in the vaccine. As of now, the CDC is estimating that the vaccine is only 30% effective. Effective is defined as not getting the flu at all if you've gotten the vaccine. But in those who are immunized that do get the vaccine, that do get the flu, illness will be less severe. There will be fewer chances of hospitalization and fewer deaths. Vaccine's not available everywhere in our county, but it can be found. Call your provider first to see if it's available. The 2 public health clinics still give the vaccine at low or no cost while the supplies last. Vaccine clinics can also be found online at vchca.org/ph. At Public Health, we've reissued the health officer's order to all licensed medical facilities in the county that workers who have contact with patients or the public must either be immunized or wear a mask. We've sent hot tips to all providers in the county, encouraging them to prescribe Tamiflu for their high-risk or seriously ill patients with the flu. We've sent out 2 press releases earlier this month. We've vaccinated 92% of all public health employees, and the other 8% are wearing masks. Public Health has identified a shortage of Tamiflu, the flu treatment drug, at pharmacies throughout the county. 90% of the pharmacies in our county did not have the drug. We brought the problem to the attention of the state. We called 150 of the 232 pharmacies in our county and told them how to get the drug. We brought media attention to the problem, and ultimately now 90% of the pharmacies do stock the drug. Public Health has worked with staff at 14 assisted living facilities to control their flu outbreaks. Are there any questions about the flu?
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, can I, should you take Tamiflu as opposed to the flu shot? Or what's the, is it before or after, or how does that work with Tamiflu?
The best preventive measure you can take is to get the flu shot. If you've gotten the flu shot, or if you haven't and you get the flu, and you're seriously ill or you have any high-risk conditions, such as being immunocompromised, being older than 65, being under 5, have heart conditions or lung conditions, you should get Tamiflu if you get the flu.
Okay. And I understand now that, and I think you mentioned that some people are getting the flu twice.
It's true. There are there's at least commonly, there are now 2 flus circulating in our county. The influenza A, H3N2, and influenza B.
So we've got to be careful about that then.
Yeah, we started out with more of the A's, and then as it started to fade, we started to see a bump in the influenza B's. And both of them are covered in the vaccine.
Thank you for the report, Tom.
Two quick questions. One, you said 6 weeks instead of 2 weeks. You're talking about the influenza season is lasting that?
Yeah,
Not the symptoms for any one individual.
No, there are sporadic cases at low levels that can occur year long. But when we see the outbreak begin and the upswing of cases, it usually rises and falls for that bulk of cases in 2 weeks. This year we've seen that bulk last for 6 weeks.
And we're still in that bulk period?
No, actually, I think we're now tailing out of it as of a week or so ago. It's possible that one of the other influenza viruses will rear its head, but in the past it usually has not.
And what's the youngest age that children can get the vaccine?
I missed that.
What's the youngest age that children can get the vaccine?
6 months of age.
So children over 6 months should go get vaccinated?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Levin. I really appreciate it. I know all of us have seen this in the news and the outbreak and had many of our coworkers or family members, sick and then re-sick. And I just think it's very valuable for us to have this information and to make sure that people know where to get the flu vaccine if they feel that they need it. I think that's important to hear that from someone like you. I also wanted to just say thank you because I know that your office and behavioral health is working on our opioid and heroin and epidemic, and I hope that we'll hear from that pretty soon. I know we talked about that in November, and I appreciate you coming back every so often to give us updates on that, the flu vaccine, just like the fire when you gave us with the masks and so forth. So I appreciate your time and effort in looking out for our community.
Thanks for the opportunity for Public Health to update you.
Yeah, thanks for coming out and seeing us. I appreciate that. Ms. Bowers?
Thank you, Chair Foy. And Dr. Levin, thank you for your leadership also when working with the health providers and kind of requiring that everyone gets the shot. I know that was a bold step, but it's really made a difference. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor.
A few more.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
On another matter, I just wanted to also laud the county for putting on that wonderful Management Council awards to our employees, and I was wondering if Mr. Powers could talk a little about that.
Perfect. Nice setup. Thank you, Supervisor Parks. Yeah, exactly. And I'll go right to that. So thank you. Yes, and I want to thank the Management Council Board for all the work in putting that on. Christy Madden, Mark Barella, Melissa Livingston, many of the folks are here, and the other members of the board. It's a lot to put that on. But it was one of the best attended events, and we really appreciate the supervisors being there. It means a lot. And a lot of wonderful folks nominated and recognized. And it's so inspiring to hear the stories of the work that they do because they inspire other county employees. And I want to walk through the list of folks so you can hear their names because you know a lot of them, but some of them you don't. And that's part of the reason we do these awards. The Integrity Award. And just by the way, these are folks who are nominated by other managers who sort of see them as role models and examples of good work. The Integrity Award was given to David Fleisch, Public Works. Innovation to Patricia Oliveras from the Probation Agency. Mentoring Award to our very own Rosa Gonzalez, Clerk of the Board. Check her out. Best Kept Secret, excuse me, Michael White from the Behavioral Health Department, right? You see the leadership from Behavioral Health nodding back there. Somebody you probably never heard of, but how much he cares and how much compassion he has for the people he's serving. Just beautiful. And to, excuse me, yes, and around the clock supporting a lot of the trauma issues around in response to the trauma, the Thomas Fire. Superior Customer Service, Charles Ginkle from Environmental Health, one of those folks who was on the front lines helping sign up those almost 700 individuals and families for the Calorie Cycle program and getting the phase 1 done. Just the humility and the quality of the work was beautiful. And then the Management Council Board gives a Director's Award that they all sort of agree on this award, and that was given to GSA's very own Greg Bergman. So big congratulations. See a lot of nodding, right? Because we know these folks are so deserving.
And I know you can't get into details, but he had done such a great job in saving substantial funds to the county.
Yes, thank you, Supervisor. Yes, and the Fleet Department. He really dived in and just did a top-to-bottom analysis and really improved efficiencies and saved a lot of money. And that's one of the things that helps GSA and IT lower overhead is that kind of work.
It does stick in your mind because it is so exceptional. But I think he also went from they had documents where they were, I guess maybe procurement documents that went from like 1,000. He got it down to like 42 or something.
Right.
Just being able to save that time too, as well as money.
I love that you remember that. That's so great. Because that's Lean Six, right? In a nutshell, right there. You have how many steps in the process? Do you need them all? And that's what they do, and it's a great example of GSA and Greg's leadership. I also had the privilege of giving a couple of awards. My champion for change to Scott Barish. Some of you may know him, some may not. He essentially built the Employee Assistance Program and has been leading it for 30 years. And I can tell you he's helped people on an individual basis, but he's also helped departments who in certain areas may be struggling, get them on a better path. And time after time, people just are so grateful for Scott and his entire team at EAP. Also, a Good Government Award I gave to Jim Dembowski, our historian who's just been a bedrock of HR and labor services for our county for over 30 years. He's more than just a snappy dresser. He's fully dedicated and a total... So much more, is right. He's a total pro. And then because this is a unique time that we've really, most of us, never been through, we gave some special awards for work during the Thomas Fire and additional Good Government Awards. And the first one was to Dustin Gardner, who's the Assistant Fire Chief. And he's the one who, when the fire broke out early on Monday evening, December 4, had to make a decision about ordering additional resources. And right away, because he saw the conditions, he ordered 70 strike teams. What does that mean? That means 310 fire engines from all across the state and about 2,000 firefighters. And that made a huge difference in fighting that 35-mile long fire line that all the departments had to fight. The guys behind my house were from Laguna Beach, for goodness sake, that night. And all over, they were from San Bernardino. So Dustin, just a great job. Kevin McGowan, of course, we've all seen the great work he's done from OES and his calm leadership. Bill Stratton from Environmental Health leading that debris removal process, getting it going incredibly quickly, maybe some of the fastest in the state in the debris removal process. Barry Zimmerman, time after time, volunteering, stepping up, helping to get the rental assistance program going and setting up the local assistance center and running it just like that. So just an amazing job. And then Christy Madden was in the EOC hour after, 24/7 after the fire started, and then during the flood in Montecito. She lives in Montecito, and she actually saw the cell over her house that night, which was pretty scary, but family and home are safe. But then she was so dedicated that she was out of her house for a while, but she could have gone back a week earlier, but she stayed down here because she wanted to stay connected to the EOC during those sort of dangerous rain times following the fire. And, of course, lastly, to Matt Carroll for just organizing all these many moving parts that we have in our recovery effort to Thomas Fire. And I do Kevin McGowan?
You did.
I'm sorry. Yes, sorry. I want to make sure I did. Yes. And Matt, again, just a great big thank you. So again, I really appreciate the support and the Management Council leadership. A couple things. There's a master disaster workshop coming February 22nd at Sarah Center. Speaking of, continuing disaster preparation, it's been ongoing for years and it continues ongoing. I attended the judicial enrollment of Judge Joanne Johnson on behalf of your board. What a powerhouse this woman is. So just if you get a chance to look at her bio, what a great addition to the bench. And then lastly, yes, it is that time again. I know you were thinking it's corporate games time. So it's time to sign up And registrations will be held Saturday, March 28th, closing ceremonies May 5th. Order your items by March 5th. These are pretty slick items, I have to say. And they're going fast. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you. A lot going on. And again, I know you were looking. Go ahead.
I know, right? Sorry. Thank God you said that. There's so much going on that I could overlook something, and I sure don't want to do that. So sometimes things fly under the radar, and that's a really good thing, and this is one of those things. Our disability management system implementation, IT implementation, just went live February 1st, and you haven't heard anything, right? Well, that's the sound of success. You know, when they don't do it right, that gets a lot more exciting. But they did it right, and this is one of the areas that our executive leadership team has identified as a priority for them for many years. And now we'll have a system that's very robust, that's county-wide for all 9,000 employees in 25 departments. But just a great leadership by Lorena Morales, Denise Carizosa, Tracy Sewell, Shannon Leslie, John Lynn, our IT folks, and his team. And all the departments, and then many training sessions that went over and over to make sure you know how to use the system. It's a very robust system. LA County uses it. Now everybody's going to be on the same system with the great prompts and due diligence efforts. And they came in under budget, well under budget. So a big congratulations to the Disability Management Leadership Team and for SAGIA implementation. Thank you. That's it, I swear.
Well, I'm glad you didn't forget that one, because that's very important. That's big, it's important, and it just goes to show that people are working hard to make it right. So, you know, because it's amazing. If you don't take that much time and energy and put it into it, it can be just a flop. So, very good. I appreciate all that and where we're going and what we're doing. All right, we got a little time for our regular agenda before 10 o'clock time certain. So why don't we go to item number 25. Thank you, Doctor, for coming. And that's going to be adopt resolution establishing 3 regular full-time equivalent. Oh, this isn't even Barry Zimmerman asking for more people, no.
Surprise. Good morning, Supervisors, Chair Foy, CEO Powers. My name is Terry Inez. I'm the Administrative Division Chief with Behavioral Health Department. This item is requesting approval of the addition of 3 regular full-time positions to expand our special education services. These are mandated services managed by the Special Education Local Plan Areas, or SELPA, through the Ventura County Office of Education. Currently, behavioral health is contracted to provide services for 20 of the 21 districts for the SELPA, and that's at about 100 schools. The service population are students with significant long-term impairments at school due to mental health issues, and the goal is to maintain children in their home and school and avoid costly out-of-county and out-of-state placements. Since VCBH has contracted with the VCOE, the Office of Education, the out-of-area placements have dropped from about 100 out-of-area placements to 20, and we're serving about 1,000 youth annually. The requested and agreed-upon caseload for students is 15 students to 1 clinician. We're averaging about 19 to 1, so the Office of Education has asked us to increase our clinicians to reduce that caseload. These positions are fully funded by the Office of Education, no additional county cost, and there's a lot more detail in the board letter if you would like to see it. Do you have any questions?
Steve, do you have a comment?
I don't have questions. I have a comment. I went to the original meeting years ago, and the 2 bureaucracies had to get together. And what usually happens around the state is the County Office of Education is at war with the County Behavioral Health Department because they're fighting over who pays, they're fighting over how's it done, and the normal kind of bureaucratic battles. And these 2 departments got together and just said, hey, we want to do better than that, and they have. And in addition to that, we have better alignment in terms of cost. It used to be that the county was paying the cost, and the school districts were making the decision about the out of state placement. Well, you can imagine now the school districts are paying the cost because the state law change, and we have better out-of-state placement decisions, and that we went from 100 down to 20 people in terms of out-of-state placement. So when it reminds you that part of what good government is trying to align accountability, align so that people have the proper incentives as they're making decisions. But the real compliment I want to make is that two bureaucracies that could as easily fight, easier to fight than it is to work hard together. We don't hear about it. For years now, we haven't been hearing about struggles and problems and challenges between the two. And as a result, behavioral health services to young people in our school system has just been remarkably improved over the last few years. So please pass my comments on to everybody involved in terms of making that happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor?
I just wanted to comment that I think overall we have done better over the years in providing children mental health services. And I'm thinking maybe in a future board presentation we can get some feedback on the Children's Crisis Unit that we have established, as well as understanding the benefits now too of the Horizon View facility too. We were all at the ribbon cutting, but it's nice to hear now that we have patients that are using these and how effective they are. So at a future board meeting, that would be great to get some feedback. Thank you.
Supervisor Long?
I just want to say thank you. I know that the school board really do appreciate it. VCOE really appreciates it because they're all doing all that they can to educate, and part of the intellect is the emotional, and it's very supportive. So our families thank you too. So thank you.
Great. Appreciate you coming out. Some of the things we look at is there other ways of doing this, but it sounds like this is what the new law is that the state requires to pay for this, and the school district pays this cost. Do we have any issues of them not able to, depending on where things go, or what would happen in the long run about having, a lot of times it's easy, put it on the county, we'll pay, and then if something happens, they look like the bad guys laying people off and those kind of things, but most likely this is a mandated thing now that is required to be done?
Correct, it's
and they're paying.
mandated, and we have had no issues with the district covering this.
Right, and so were they just more concerned that with that 19 versus 15 or whatever it was, that we just weren't able to see enough kids, enough opportunity?
Right, our caseloads are just very high, and it depends on the school and the acuity of the kids, where sometimes the caseload is 10 to 1.
Oh, really?
So it really varies, and we continue to partner with them and work together, and we may need to increase at some point, but in this environment, we need to be nimble with our dollars and our staffing as well.
Yeah, with your staff, because again, things happen, and all of a sudden the state says, schools I can't pay for it, what happens if we get started? I guess we still have probably a responsibility anyway that we have to deal with that, so.
Right.
We have a responsibility, and also community members know that we are good at it. Mm-hmm. So they do actually come here because of it, and I know that the families do appreciate it.
And I want to thank you, too, for working with the schools and the children. Thank you for the excellent work.
And I'd also just like to call out Patrick Zarate, who is here this morning, and just know that he's been doing a great job as our interim behavioral health director, stepped in there when Elaine had to go on medical leave. So just so happy to see him here. I've heard rumors that he's thinking of retiring, and just want to appreciate him for the good work that he's done and stepping up when we needed him.
Great. Okay. So we've heard this. Do we have anything else?
No, that's awesome.
Very good. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
We have a second.
Second.
By
Second.
Supervisor Argosa, and it worked. I can vote. It worked. They
Thank
fixed
you.
Too
it.
much time on a touch screen.
I know.
You're doing that football analysis.
That's right. I know. Jeez. Okay. We also have item 26, approval authorization probation director, agency director to sign a contract with our residential treatment services. Mr. Varela.
Good morning, Chair Foy, members of the board, CEO Powers. For the record, Mark Varela, Probation Agency Director and Chief Probation Officer. Here before you this morning to ask that you approve and authorize the Director of the Probation Agency to enter into a contract with Phoenix House Academy in Los Angeles County for residential treatment services for youth in the juvenile justice system. Second part of the recommendation is to ask that you approve the Chief Probation Officer to extend the contract up to 4 one-year terms for an amount not exceeding $500,000. A little bit of history. Annually, our Juvenile Justice Coordinating Council evaluates our juvenile justice programs that are funded through the Juvenile Justice Crime Prevention Act dollars. This fiscal year, roughly about $2.9 million were received from the state for JJCPA. Our Juvenile Justice Coordinating Council, which is made up of 15 members representing all disciplines working with youth and government to make decisions on how that money is allocated and used. For the last several years, one of the glowing gaps in our juvenile justice approach is residential treatment and the lack thereof of residential substance abuse and mental health treatment for kids in the juvenile justice system. JJCC authorized the probation agency to begin an RFP process, and through that process, Phoenix House was identified as the recipient of the contract. We have sat down with Phoenix House over a period of time. We have finalized the contract. The contract comes now before your board for approval. This need for residential treatment also is consistent with our Juvenile Justice Master Plan, which was completed last year with input from all of the stakeholders from JJCC and put together by NCCD, which is the National Council on Crime and Delinquency. So this is what is before you today. We've had a delegation that has visited Phoenix House, including one of our juvenile court judges and members, interagency members that work with youth here in the county. They've given their blessing and bringing it forward. And I'm convinced that Phoenix House offers a good, comprehensive approach to treating kids in a residential setting. So I'll open it up to any questions you may have.
Okay, well, thank you, Mark. I know that Supervisor Long has a question. We have a speaker, too.
Actually, I just wanted to say that I really appreciate you feeling the void for our community with this. I know you've been working hard on it, and I just wanted to appreciate it. And also to tag you in to say thank you beforehand for helping me with the AOJ for the CSAC, and then it's also coming up in NACO about these types of programs.
Yes.
And so forth. So I look forward to working with you on those as well.
Fantastic. Let me know what you need.
Thank you. All right, Mark, we got one speaker,
Okay.
Kara Martin. Three minutes.
Hello, good morning. My name is Shira Martin, and I'm actually the residential director at Phoenix House. And so I just wanted to share a little bit more about our program. So our program, it services the needs of adolescent youth from 13 to 17 years old, both male and female. We refer to them as patients because they are deemed medically eligible to receive services by our program. We focus a lot more on trauma-informed and evidence-based practices. Each patient is expected to be an active participant in their treatment process. So treatment services include drug and alcohol interventions, mental health services, educational and vocational services, as well as medical and psychiatric care. Just to update you all, we are actually in the process of becoming an STRTP, which means it's a short-term residential therapeutic program. And we hope to be accredited within the next few months. So we're actually on our way in the process of becoming a part of this. Generally speaking, the length of treatment in our program is on an individual basis. So it can last anywhere from 2 to 12 weeks for our patients in the program. Our treatment modalities are provided through a team approach. So that's composed of a psychiatrist, nursing staff, therapist, of course the residential unit staff that work with the youth directly, as well as the educational vocational services. The treatment team supports the patient in confronting problematic behaviors as well as developing effective coping skills to deal with their substance use and mental health issues. This is achieved through the use of evidence-based practices and interventions that are trauma-informed. Patients participate in both individual and group therapy. At the minimum, they meet with their therapist about 1 time a week. It could go up to twice, depending if there's any crisis intervention that's needed. As far as group counseling concerns, some of the evidence-based practices that I mentioned, they are trauma-focused, cognitive behavioral therapy group. We also offer an aggression replacement therapy group. We also offer seeking safety. And we also offer cognitive behavioral interventions for substance abuse and use. On site, we also have Los Angeles County Office of Education, which is also known as LACO. It maintains a fully accredited high school on site, and academic tutoring is available for those who are unable to attend school on a daily basis. And I just thank you for letting me share this information with you all this morning.
Thank you for coming out and explaining what you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For your
Thank you.
accreditation.
Mr. Chair, I want to thank Mark and thank Mrs. Barton, and I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's teasing me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. And real quick, hey, Sean, you want to come down and do your item? I know you're sitting up there. We'll item number 30.
Good morning, Supervisor Foy, members of the board, Mr. Powers. This item before you today is our recommendation for the amendment of the management, confidential, clerical, and other unrepresented employees resolution. There are three amendments in this item, and they're, I think, can be categorized as cleanup items. One is in regard to the healthcare agency fiscal premium payment provision, item 410 in the resolution, which has been in existence for some time. We're rewording the wording of the provision because in consultation with the Visera administration, we've come to understand that they're considering the eligibility of the fiscal premium pay for PEPRA pensionable compensation. We've reworded it so that they will consider it and accept it as PEPRA pensionable, which was the original intent. The next amendment is regarding the labor relations manager, and this is a cleanup item. It's allowing this classification, like similarly situated classifications, to receive flexible merit increases. Again, the intent, this was an omission. Our intent was always to include this classification along with the other classifications for eligibility purposes. And perhaps most significantly is an amendment for the annual leave redemption provisions which your board previously approved last year. We're essentially tweaking the language in there to have it align with some of the be aligned with and similar to some of the language in recent, which we incorporated in recent union negotiations, most noticeably VCDSA. The change in the provision essentially is this: for those who elect to receive a cash out in a given year of their leave redemptions, and they do not meet the usage requirements, you'll recollect that in order to get a cash out of accrued leave, you must use at least 80 hours per year. Now, some people elect to get the leave redemption but don't use it. Previously, language was in there that said that the amount of unused leave would be basically reduced or forfeited from an individual's balance. This amendment, this recommended amendment, basically states that the cash-out election would be disallowed or ignored, and instead the individual would be deemed to have constructively received the total amount elected. So they'll receive taxable wages, they'll have taxable income on the amount that they would have received as a cash out, rather than have the amount of unused leave forfeited. So we think this is favorable and a cleanup to that provision of the contract also. With that, I'm free to accept any questions that you may have.
It's complicated enough for you? Okay, good.
Complicated enough, right?
Just the right amount. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Vote. You get everybody? Thank you, Sean. All right, Mr. Powers, do you want to do 31 real quick, and then we'll go to these other ones?
Certainly, thank you, Chair Foy. Yes, and as we all know, after 21 years serving as our harbor director, perhaps one of the longest-serving harbor directors in our state, Lynn Krieger, has announced her retirement at the end of March, and I'm asking your board to approve authorizing her to serve as an extra help employee for a critically needed position. And the reasons are these. Ms. Krieger has developed a unique set of skills over those many years of service in general, and specific to several key projects that are at critical points. As we know, development projects typically span over multiple years, and that's what's the case here. Fisherman's Wharf in particular is at a critical juncture, and we're making, I believe, good progress. It is complicated because it involves the city of Oxnard, the county, and the Coastal Commission. And we're having good meetings with Ms. Krieger and the city and as the Coastal Commission. And so I would be concerned that if we didn't have her there, it might derail or slow that progress. And then also she has, there's just to help with the hotel project to make sure that's moving forward well. And then dredging, there's a lot of complexity involved with the securing and ensuring adequate dredging funding. And Ms. Krieger has been a great help in leading that. The request is for a limited duration. We're estimating up to about 2 days per week to the end of the calendar year, and really as needed. We have opened a recruitment on the position. We're doing a nationwide recruitment, and we appreciate Ms. Krieger's willingness to serve in this role to support moving these projects forward, and I thank you, Board, for your consideration. Thank you.
Good, good. Supervisor?
Yeah, just a question. As I read the request, it is to have her there part-time until her replacement is on board, quote, and up to speed. So what is the period of time do you anticipate?
Well, as I say, sort of the outer limits would be 2 days per week through the end of the calendar year. But as I say, it's really as needed, and it depends on when we get the new harbor director on board and their particular set of skills and experience, and in their judgment, how much support they would like. They may come in and say, "Oh boy, we really appreciate it for that whole duration," or they may say, "I think just a month or two and we got it." So it's sort of as needed.
Okay, so that will in part be decided of whether to continue. What will be decided in part by the new director who comes on board.
Yes, in coordination with our office. Yes.
While it's a national search and all, how long does that generally take in terms of the whole process?
Well,
you've hired a lot of harbor directors.
yeah, exactly. Once every 3 decades. So it really varies. And this is a unique position, and I hate to put too much.
But you're thinking by the end of the calendar year is what you have stated.
Yes. Our goal is obviously to have somebody on here before the end of March. That would be a fast turnaround. But certainly in the next few months.
That's what I wanted to hear,
Sure.
just kind of get an indication, because I think that we're going to be having some great opportunities here as we look other individuals out there, and so obviously you want to keep the department running, and
Exactly.
as it has, we need a lot of those expert skills that she has in place.
That's right.
But I know that there's also something you said for new blood, and I want to make sure that we have the opportunity to do that search. So one of the letter writers that we got on this was talking about a citizens committee that could also do a review, and I know that is a difficult thing to do, to bring in citizens on that. But I do know other agencies have done that with other types of positions in terms of, just kind of hearing the individuals, maybe the top 3, and I don't know if we want to open that kind of process up.
Well, thank you, Supervisor. We're evaluating that, and as part of the trick of that is who who represents the community in that. So, but it certainly appreciate your sentiment. We'll factor that in. Thank you.
Well, I agree with that, and because it's not just the cities around the harbor that are involved in that, it's the whole Ventura County. That's the hard one to get everybody in the room. But I'm glad that they brought that up. I did also get some letters, like everyone, about the critical need position. Is this really a critical need, and is coming through for this last year, and knowing the knowledge of, for example, the Fisherman's Wharf that has been 15 years, and all of the knowledge base on that is extremely important. So I appreciate you pointing out the 3 items that she'll be really focused on. I know the day-to-day stuff, it won't be.
Exactly.
It is the critical items. So I just wanted to make sure we verify that for our community. Thank you.
And I guess I agree with you too. It's not just the citizens. We also have lessees. We have the business community. We have the wider area. But we do often have some types of peer review when we do select nominees to to a position like this. So the idea of broadening that, if we do a peer review, might be something that would be beneficial to the process.
I'll motion to approve.
Yeah, and I appreciate Lynn willing to do that. I know that some of these developers have poured millions, and they want to make sure that there's no hiccups in what they're doing. And I think that's critical for us, because you don't need to start over. Even though you get somebody good, you could go through a start over. So for her, I'm sure she'd rather say I could be gone and retire and not have to, because some of the stuff she has to deal with is going to be pretty tough still. So I appreciate that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I want to thank Lynn for the 21 years of service to Ventura County and also to the harbor. I know that she's done quite a bit of work out there, and with the toppers, with the BISC, with the Maritime Museum, with the Boat Lunch and Rep and so forth. But however, I cannot support this at this time, because I believe that the new harbor director, when that person is hired, I think that he ought to take over right April 1 with probably new ideas and new thoughts, and that I believe it'll help the county and the city of Oxnard and also the Coastal Commission. So also the idea of it was shared with me that maybe when have somebody from the harbor, whether it's a lessee or one of the folks out there, maybe in a 5-member panel to interview might be an idea. Again, that's an HR issue, and I'm sure that Sean and Mike can look into that. But at this time, I cannot support this item at this time.
Supervisor?
I would just say, Lynn Krieger has had a tough job. And oftentimes we don't realize how difficult work is for our county employees. The sleepless nights, the how could I do this better, the struggle to move forward. And she has been, because it involves development, it involves controversy. Often development does, and it's difficult to work to make these things smooth. So I just also appreciate the fact that she has worked really hard in those years of service. But I do think that it is something that we have the ability to make some changes at the harbor too. So I'm glad with the new director that they will have more oversight and just determine whether they want to keep the same director in place.
I'd just like to point out, I think we're at a very interesting time in that we've had demonstrations over and over again of remarkable county leadership in terms of our managers and what's coming from our CEO. So bottom line is, if our CEO thinks that Lynn Krieger coming back is valuable for management, I'm there, and if he thinks it's critical, I'm there in terms of doing that. That's the one point. The second point I'd like to make is I'm not supportive of, just because there's some political pressure on a particular issue, that we suddenly change our policies. If all of our policies are, when we hire the assistant CEO, that has a big impact. When we hire the behavioral health director, it has a big impact. If we're going to have a citizens review committee for all of those, that's fine. But I think we send a very different message to whoever gets this job. If we say, on this job, we did this citizens review panel and all of that, I think we send a different message about what that person's relationship is with our CEO and with the sort of the management structure here. And the other thing I would offer to you is just creating that committee would be a hugely difficult thing to do, because you're going to have a lot of harbor residents will want to have the dominant position on that authority, and as Supervisor Long pointed out, it's really a county harbor, and you would need to have representatives of people from all around the county, including just people that aren't associated with the harbor at all, that just want good government, and go, hey, how much are we doing there in terms of good government for the county? So I think that becomes, I just would point out, I think it becomes very problematic in a lot of ways if we head that direction, unless we're going to do that for all of our positions. And I would leave, so I'll leave that up to the CEO, but I wanted to express that.
And I appreciate that. I would wholeheartedly agree with you on that. No, I think that's great. Okay.
Yeah, and I will also, I will support the motion with the goal of March. I think that's a great goal.
The sooner we
And Supervisor Zaragoza, whatever your position, I just let you know that there was nothing in this that the new director who comes in can't say, I got it, I got the relationships, or, hey, Lynn, can you help me with some of these relationships? I don't know anybody at the Coastal Commission. I come from some other state or, on the East Coast or something. So that would be, but the idea that she has to say, based on the new director, is going to have total responsibility.
Yep,
so.
and I appreciate that too, but
Yeah.
I know there's quite a few people out there and people that are really qualified that can run that harbor as well. Yeah. But I do want to thank Lynn for her 21 years of service.
Okay, can we all vote?
And I do appreciate the discussion of having a broader review panel, and when we do these peer review types of things, I think it sends a good message.
Yeah. Thank you.
Chair Foy?
Yes.
2 additional letters received this morning from Tom McAnally and Jackie Pinson for the record, item 31.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. We vote, okay. Thank you. And we've got a couple moments before. Yeah, we could do 32. That'll be real quick.
And 33.
33, we'll do them. Okay. That'll be me. I want to recommend Ms. Sherry Valley as appointee to the Ventura County Behavioral Health. A parent, caregiver, adult child struggling with mental illness. I think she'll make an excellent addition. I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
There you go. Vote. Thank you.
Sherry Valley from Senior.
Gotta go. Item 33.
Yes.
I'd like to appoint Joyce Pinker to the Area Agency Advisory Council for the 2-year term, and I think she'd be a really good choice and good recommendations.
Second.
Steve Bennett, second.
Yes.
Yep. There you go. Thank you. And if we can do our, when we're done, do our correspondence file, correspondence agenda real quick. Can you go do them all at one time? We have to do them individually. 39 through 42? Okay, thank you. Motion by Supervisor Zaragoza, Supervisor Long, seconds. There you go. Okay, gets us that. Yeah, we'll take a minute break if you need to go. Okay. We need a vote. We need a vote. You're ready to on break already. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. 10 o'clock? Ready to go? Okay. You ready to go? Yeah, let's do it. Okay, we're going to come back to order. Supervisor Long took longer than a minute, but.
Really?
We'll go to item number 19, which will be Supervisor Bennett. We'll let the judge sit for a while.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Foy. The board letters, I think, very self-explanatory. I will not belabor my comments. I made some of these comments last time, but there is an effort out there now to repeal SB 1. People around the state want to know where we stand as a board of supervisors on that. Supervisor Long also needs to have that clarified as she communicates with CSAC and as they take their particular actions there. And the repeal of SB 1, I think, would be very detrimental for our transportation here in Ventura County. And the idea that we would $5 billion coming in from this can do so much each year for our transportation infrastructure in California. And if it doesn't come in, those bridges are going to have to be repaired. The essential things are going to have to happen, and that means there will be less money available for the other things that we want to do and we've talked about here as a board, including expanding our whole transit system, expanding our bike trails, our bike lanes, et cetera. And there's arguments always out there that, there's plenty of money already, we don't need this, but I would make the argument that this is very dedicated funding, and if it's pretty hard to make the case that the infrastructure in California, transportation infrastructure, doesn't need a substantial shot in the arm. So with that, I think the issues are very clear, and I'll end my comments and turn it over to any public comments that we have. And I know we have, although I don't see him listed as a speaker, we have our transportation department, I think, wants to comment on this. Is that right, Mr. Fleisch, right? So I'll turn it over to Mr. Fleisch for his comments.
Good morning, Chair Foy, Supervisors, Mr. Powers. For the record, I'm Dave Fleisch, the Public Works Agency. When your board began to address this topic several weeks ago, when the legislative platform came up, I went back to staff and said, it would be a good idea if we kind of put together what the pluses and minuses are and what the benefits and the detriments are for SB1 for the county. And so that's really the purpose of what this is. Just briefly, what SB1 is, for those who might not know. I know your board is very well familiar with this, but for the public record, it was approved by the governor and the legislature by a 2/3 vote. It was actually signed by the governor in April of last year. The actual first portion of that, the 12-cent per gallon gas tax, took effect 1 November of last year. And note that the last time that the gas tax was implemented was in 1994, and it was at a flat rate. No index for inflation, no change based upon anything. So do the math on the buying power of that is significantly less. The other components of it, there's also a tax on diesel at 20 cents a gallon. And starting in January of this year, there will be an increased registration fee based upon the value of your vehicle, essentially between $25 and $175, and that $175 is for the vehicles that are fairly expensive. And then come 2020, all electric vehicles will receive a $100 registration fee since they pay no gas tax. There's a lot of confusion about what does this pay for. There's a lot of myths about what it pays for that it doesn't, and so I wanted to go through very briefly the large components of this. Of the roughly $5.4 billion a year, $3.3 billion of it goes to the cities and counties in the state for basic road maintenance, evenly split between Caltrans and the cities and counties. That's the first two bullets you see there. The next bullet is specifically for Caltrans, again, additional funding for bridges and culverts for the state highway system. The remaining things, the trade corridor enhancement, the bike and ped, the transit capital projects, congestion corridor, those are all competitive programs that we will have ability to compete for those funds for additional projects. Note the $100 million for bike and pedestrian is doubling the active transportation funding that was presented previously, and we've already been recipients of getting some of that money through the most recent round of active transportation grants that we got. And then there's a $200 million match for funds for local agencies, and that's for those with a self-help tax. Unfortunately, we won't be eligible for that since we did not pass the tax in this state, in this county, last November. Where does it not go? And this is really important because there tends to be a lot of misinformation out there. None of this money goes to the general fund of the state, none. None of it goes to pay outstanding transportation loans. Part of the bill actually requires the state to pay those transportation loans back, not with this money, but with money out of the general fund. None of it goes to high-speed rail, and none of it goes for non-road related projects. Now, I will say that there's 2% of this that goes to the Departments of Parks and Recreation for the state and the Department of Food and Agriculture. And the reason why that's there is there's gasoline purchased for off-road vehicles and for farm equipment, and this is the percentage, about the percentage of gas that's purchased for those, so that's in recognition to go back for those who are typically not using the road with the gas that is purchased. So that 2% goes back to them on a pro rata share based upon that gas purchase. There is, again, no funds to high-speed rail. You will see that there's funds for rail there, but it's specifically local rail, like the light rail in LA or Metrolink. It has no attachment to the high-speed rail program. And there's also an allocation for public transit. So what is this going to cost the average person? And again, the data I'm providing is not things that my staff created. These are things from various components of websites that we've gotten from either the CSAC or SEAC or from the Fix Our Roads Coalition or a number of other places who've done a lot of research on this. The estimation is it'll cost the average driver about $120 a year, $70 additional in gas over a year period, and about $50 in vehicle registration based on what the average value of a car is. So roughly $10 a month it will cost the average individual. A key component of this is accountability. Your board may recall we brought to you our list of projects for SB1 funds this year that was required for you to take action on in order for us to get the funding. At the end of this fiscal year, we have to report back to the state on what we actually spent the money on, and that's a process that's ongoing. And it's to ensure that the funding is like we're accountable for the funds that we got and that we're using them for what it's intended for. It's important to note that currently 70% of the gas tax is protected by state law. It's Article 19 in the Constitution protects that so that it cannot be used for anything else other than transportation purposes. ACA 5, which should be on the ballot in June, a constitutional amendment, will protect that other 30%, and currently that has no opposition. So assuming that passes in June, 100% of this funding will be protected and used for transportation purposes. So just a quick look for the county, unincorporated county, what does our funding stream look like both with the SB1 and without SB1? The red line that you see there, I believe that's red. I'm colorblind, so I'm hoping it's some darker color. As you can see, that's the line where we are, what our projected is out through 2022. And as you can see, that's below $20 million. With the SB1, that's the blue line that you see there. We're projected this year to get about just short of $20 million, and then that projects up at full implementation to over $30 million. Part of what SB1 does is it indexes all of the taxes for inflation, so they're no longer static at the year that they were enacted, but that they are through a consumer price index so that the money keeps up with what our costs are as we move forward. This is a busy slide, I apologize, but I wanted to try to show you what the impacts are for us in the county. The bar on the left, the green colors is our expenditures. The bars on the right are our revenue. The first bar on the right is with just the current gas tax. The second bar on the right is with the SB1. So you can see in 2018, we have projected expenditures of about $32 million with the revenues of about $29 million. Without the SB1, that would have been $25 million. Note the brown bar at the bottom, the other revenue is primarily grant funding that we get for projects, and so that's not operating costs, that's pretty much grant funding. So when you see the expenditures there, the dark green bar is our operational cost, which is in the vicinity of $20 to $21 million. So when you look at the revenue minus the SB1, very quickly you can see that we will not have enough without SB1 to continue our day-to-day operations. Just a note, by the way, on this previous slide, in addition to the roughly $18.5 million that the unincorporated county gets, the cities within Ventura County will receive about $21.5 million of SB1.
And so just if I could just ask this question, in 2022, I'll go back, 2022, we'd be bringing in about $17.5 million without SB1, and with
Correct.
SB1, we'd be bringing in $37 million. So we got a
Correct.
$20 million swing here.
Correct.
If we have SB1 and if we don't have SB1.
That's correct.
Right, thank you.
And
So more than double the
yes,
amount
sir.
of money.
And the real advantage, as it's written, is not only the tax itself, but that it is indexed, and it also indexes the old gas tax as well. So the tax that was there previously continues to move up now as well, before it was static. As was mentioned, there are two potential repeal actions, a ballot measure sponsored by Travis Allen and one called the Give the Voters a Voice measure. That is the one that is the most concern, at least from what I'm hearing from the SEAC folks and others, because it's not a direct repeal. What it does is puts a constitutional amendment in that would require a 2/3 vote of the populace for any transportation tax. And if it passes, it's effective retroactive to January of 2017, which would then in effect repeal SB 1. That's the challenge in looking at it, is on the surface it doesn't look like a repeal, but it actually is. So what is the impact on us if directly for the county if SB 1 is repealed? We won't have any money to pay the local match for any grant projects, so all of the roughly $3 million a year of grant money that we get will go away, barring any provision of resources from somewhere else. Essentially, our paving plan will stop. We will have enough funding to primarily keep the lights on and fill potholes and cracks. It's likely that we'll have to reduce some staff based upon our operating costs, and pretty much everything else, drainage, bridge maintenance, those sorts of things. Without additional funding, we will go into just a keep it the best we can with limited resources mode. Once again, these are bullets that have come from other sources. My staff didn't make a decision on what we felt the impacts to county residents were. Most of these are relatively self-explanatory. Damage to cars, more maintenance, those sorts of things you expect to go up. The rural roads in particular would be a concern for us, in that if we can't maintain our roads over time, we would have to start making decisions about those that we just stop paving and turn them into gravel roads. That has happened throughout the state, particularly in Northern California over the last 5 or 6 years. There's a number of counties who just made a decision to stop maintaining the pavement and let it go to gravel because they can't afford to keep the pavement maintenance up.
Mr. Chair?
Questions?
Yes.
We all belong to VCTC, you know, as we know, and the 24 counties in Southern California, Ventura County is the only one that does not have a transportation sales tax. And this places Ventura County in a distinct competitive disadvantage in respect to being able to get matching funds that are needed for transportation projects and so forth. So I believe that we need to support opposing the repeal of SB 1. We need SB 1 because, as you mentioned, Dave, in your second slide, you know, that shows where does the money go. Put that slide up again, and I think we need to concentrate on where the money goes, and that's, I think, is extremely important. You know, for example, the $1.5 billion repair of local streets and roads, the maintenance, another 1.5 for rehab, the maintaining of the roads, the bike and pedestrian projects, and multitude of projects that we need. So I think that we need the SB 1 desperately here in Ventura County. So I just wanted to assure that and support Supervisor Bennett's agenda item here. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. If I could, I'll just finish my comments with this, and that is that I think that if we don't oppose this effort to try to repeal a $5 million funding source for transportation, it hurts our credibility with CSAC and with our state partners. I think it really hurts our credibility if we go to the state legislature, as we do from time to time, and ask for special help on projects, et cetera. But I think the most important thing I would like us to consider is that on a personal level, if we're advocating that we want funding and new funding for things like bike lanes and paving roads in our areas, et cetera, there's an inherent personal contradiction if we ask for that new funding and we don't want to support this new revenue source. I respect the fact that everybody's going to have to make their own decision on this, but those are the three things that I think we should at least recognize, that it does create a credibility problem, and it does create a contradiction problem for us if we're advocating for that. Thank you.
I can speak after the speaker.
After the speaker? Okay. You want anything, Linda, first?
I'm still ambivalent about this because I see that at least it's coming from the people who drive, which I prefer than a sales tax that affects everybody. So it seems like the right source. But again, just as I have with other taxes on transportation in the past, I have some concerns with the projects themselves, like 150, 160 million of projects in Ventura County are specifically regarding train crossings. And I haven't made a decision in my mind yet how I would vote on this if it gets on the ballot. So it's hard for me to be an advocate one way or the other at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and abstain because I just don't have a really strong position on this enough to vote to oppose it or support it.
Okay, thank you.
And I do appreciate the information. I've actually put the slides up on my Facebook account. You know, it's important for voters to see what it pays for and also clearly what it doesn't pay for. So I appreciate the information. I just have not made up my mind.
And also, I believe, Mr. Chair, that not only the county is going to benefit, all the cities, the 10 cities across Ventura County are going to benefit from that. And the repairs of the bridges and roads and so forth are so important, especially when you go out there and you have to take care of your front ends and alignments in your cars and so forth. It costs us more money in the long run, you know, by not supporting this SB 1.
Okay, we got one speaker, Jose Garcia. Sir, we have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Chair and Board of Supervisors. First of all, I would like to thank Supervisor Bennett for bringing such an important item up today. In the report, very great report, and I also believe that with all the repairs, it will offset by us getting better gas mileage, less repairs on our vehicle, less wear and tear, more life out of our tires. And one thing that I didn't see up on the report, jobs. It would be a job killer. And
Yeah, I think Dave mentioned that there's jobs.
oh, okay, I was trying to read all the slides real fast. But I mean, for us here in the county, we're so dependent on what we have, and anything that we would lose or not take advantage of would be wrong. And it's so important. I want to thank you personally on behalf of my local 585, which depends on road work throughout the county, and we just need it. Everybody, we all drive them. You can't deny it. Every road we take, every highway we take, any improvement for Ventura County is desperately needed. I want to thank you guys very much, and we are behind you guys to oppose this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Okay, we have any more questions, no more comments? No, that's the only
Yes,
speaker I had?
I can speak.
Oh, no, you speak.
In regards to the reason why I had asked for this to be coming up in the last meeting was because I think this is important for our community to be educated on to the facts of the benefits and maybe the cons in which we're discussing this item. On the executive board level and the board of directors level for CSAC, which is the California State Association of Counties, there was a lot of discussion in regards to how the monies were received in the past and where they were put, and where is the money now once the SB1 comes in. Will that be spent correctly? And it saddens me that we have to have an ACA 5 to make sure that 100% of this money, if SB1 continues, is going to be used for transportation. And I believe that a lot of people have a hard time trusting our state government as to the funding that we are taxed on and where it gets spent. And so there is very much concerns into the community on transparency and where we spend our money. Everyone who has a budget decides where they spend their budget and appropriately. And there are some disheartened people on the fact that where our money has been spent in the past. And like we always, as a board, are fighting that situation, so is our state government in the people trusting that this money is going to be in there. And everyone has an idea of, I want it spent on the freeways first or roads and so forth. I will state that the CSAC is gone ahead and they are opposing the repeal And they will be using non-tax dollar money for doing that. I want to make sure that no one thinks that there's anything like that going on. I did bring the numbers in which they showed us in what our SB1 revenues will be continuing in this year and next year. And I would be remiss to state that as a county, I think that's very important for us to get our jobs done. And I echoed that up in our meetings, was the fact that our department has stated that these are things that we need. But however, as our constituents, and I wear a different hat here, as a constituents, I think they have to make their own vote, and they have to we have to listen to our voters. So with this, I was not bringing up we need to oppose or repeal, but we need to educate our community as to this, and each person based on that needs to make that decision, because it should be a vote of the people. So with that, thank you.
Supervisor Foy,
Yes.
if I could, there's often times when, particularly issues like this, when they're going to be on the ballot, et cetera, the public turns to the leadership of the county, the Board of Supervisors, and ask, what do you recommend? You study these issues, et cetera. People will be looking to us for advice, and for us to not take a position in opposition to this repeal, I think would be a huge mistake. We're talking about $20 million more that's more than doubling our money for transportation in 2022. That is a huge impact on our county, one. And two, I appreciate the comment about how maybe some of it's $150 million for train crossings. The train crossings in Ventura County are absolutely a huge safety issue. We're on the map in California as one of the places that dramatically has to improve our train crossings. So you talk about safety, everybody associated with those accidents and that we've had in Oxnard, the issues that we have with trains all the way from Moore Park up. I find it very hard to think that that the citizens of Ventura County want us to not take a position in opposition to the repeal of this tax. So thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, as a representative of CSAC, CSAC is opposing the repeal of SB1. That's 58 counties and
Actually, the vote was 41-2. So 41 counties voted yes, 2 voted no, and 2 voted no. The disheartened thing is that many of the rural counties do not have enough funding to repair the roads. And with this SB1, it is. And there's a lot of discussion in regards to the elected officials, whether their constituents will back them again if they approve this. And it's a very tough decision, and it puts everyone's feet, I think, at the fire, because everyone wants to have really good roads. However, currently, to do this, we will have to use the SB1 money. The question is, if this is repealed, would we ever, in the next 10 years, have another transportation tax or something like this in which we can help? And so you have to weigh the pros and cons of it. And that's why I want to make sure that our community is educated on it so they can each make their decision, just like when we did 2 years ago with the transportation tax. And we found where the community stated they wanted to be on that.
And I think the important thing that our public needs to know is, and I think it was mentioned in a report, the indirect impacts on the county residents. Its impact on the quality of life, economics, environmentally, its vehicle maintenance. It talks about increase in accidents because of bad roads. And it also, if we repeal this, it decreases thousands of jobs, as was mentioned by one of our speakers. And I think it's important that not only the jobs, but it's a quality of life issue. I think that's important that, to me anyway, that we keep SB1 and oppose the repeal that's currently being proposed.
I know I've gone over, but Supervisor Long, I really appreciate what Supervisor Long said about some people's opposition, because it's a hard vote for them because they might not get reelected if they do that. They know they need the money, but they might not get reelected. And I would offer to you, that's exactly what public service is about. It's about saying, I'm willing to stick my neck on the line. Getting elected is not more important than trying to motivate people to do what's collectively in the best interest of the public. That's what we're really here for. And so I really think you've highlighted the rub, why there have been some, in some of these places, there have been people that have opposed this, because it shouldn't, that's what good government is about. It's about elected officials standing up and saying, this is going to be risky for me politically, but I'm going to try to educate everybody that we need that. The majority of people in this county voted for the sales tax increase. The majority of the counties in the state have opposed this. To hear that there are rural counties that literally don't have the money to maintain their roads is a reason to say we should try to get everybody in this state to fight this repeal. Thank you.
And just to follow up on that, I understand that it's a hard job. And it's also sometimes the job of listening to our constituents and our voters as to what they are saying. So my vote today is listening to my constituents. I perhaps might agree to a different way, but it's the constituents in this seat, in this board, that's what I represent. And so I feel we have to listen to what our voters do, and the best thing that we can do as a board is to educate, to make sure people understand what the issues are so that they can vote on what's best for them.
And if I could just clarify, because a statement was made regarding my point that 161 million is for 3 train crossings. Actually, 31.5 million is for pedestrian undercrossing in Camarillo, and 62 million is for platform improvements in Simi Valley. So it's not just all necessarily, what the Rice Road one I know is some 70 million, but until I feel comfortable with myself on whether I support this, how I'm going to vote, I feel like I'm here representing, I'm here because voters trust what I believe in, and I just haven't got a strong position on this one at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and abstain. I know you can't have a perfect bill. It's very difficult to, particularly when it comes to funding, and there's a lot of needs out there, and there's a lot of wants out there. But I've been comfortable in the past not supporting the transportation taxes, sales taxes partially because, as I was saying, it comes from sales tax. Everyone gets it. Here, at least, it's coming from the drivers. So there's some definitely positives, but I'm just not there enough to support it. And it is also something of whether I'm concerned about getting reelected or not. That's not the point here. It's whether I feel supportive of where the funding's going and the need for it.
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Foy, I'm counting on you because it looks like you're ready. But
you guys have too much fun. You're entertaining all these people. I like
but anyway, to save us from a remarkable situation, which would be our board of supervisors not supporting this opposition. So I hope you're there for us.
Mr. Chair, I want to share one more thing. I drive to Camarillo for VCTC in the morning, and from the collections over to Carmen Road, when you get on the 101, it takes 30 minutes. And it's a bumper to bumper. Remember when you go from Oxnard to Camarillo or vice versa? We need that money to improve the 101 also and numerous other streets. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Okay, did we have a motion?
Go ahead and second it.
We have a motion and a second. And we have, everyone vote, please.
I knew I could count on you.
No.
Oh, boy. Jeez.
And
Thank you for all
Supervisor Bennett, I really appreciate you bringing this up for the further discussion. As I had promised before, when things come in, I want to make sure our community is educated on this, and I appreciate it.
Okay.
Well,
and because you guys all took so long on that one, I'm going to ask the judge to wait until we're done with our 10:30. So I think Sean's up. Is this Sean up for this? Are you up for this, Mike?
Yeah, Sean should be coming
Sean
down momentarily.
Oh, well.
But we
maybe
appreciate.
Judge, I don't know.
Let's see.
No. Where's Sean?
Going once.
Going once. Sean, are you there? Are you there?
I don't think you thought we would be ready so quickly.
Oh, there he comes. Oh, the judge is leaving us.
Well, thank you, Chair Foy.
You shall return, right, Mr. Tax Collector? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Foy and board members, and appreciate the opportunity to recognize our wonderful employees for 25 years of service and more. So with that, take it away, Sean and Polly.
Thank you, Chair Foy, members of the board, Mr. Powers, Sean Otten again, and thank you for allowing me to, on your behalf, present these service awards for employees with 25 and more years of service. We have 12 employees here today, so we'll, as in the past, we'll read each person's a little presentation for each person, and I ask each person then to come forward, receive their award, and then stay up here. And at the very end, we'll take a group picture if we may. And as usual, Mr. Powers and I will tag team this event. So with that said, I will start off with the first employee to be recognized is Hermelinda Estrada, Assessor Technician 3 from the Assessor's Office, with 25 years of service. Ermelinda is required to complete complicated tasks and review complex legal documents with the Property Transfer Division. Her prior assignments included processing exemption for institutions' welfare, and the assessment of personal property. Prior to her promotion into the Assessor Technician series, Ermelinda provided support as an office assistant to many of the assessor's real property division. Thank you for your service, Ermelinda. Next, we have Maricela Diaz, Administrator, Officer 2, from the Department of Child Support Services with 25 years of service. Maricela started her career with the county in 1993 as an office assistant with HSA. She steadily promoted with the IT department and the DA's office. She's been with the Department of Child Support Services since 2002. She's an integral part of the team and is respected throughout the department. Maricela is naturally gifted with strong leadership skills and has impeccable integrity. She's well known for her honesty, caring nature, and extremely genuine and pleasant attitude. Maricela is an example of all that is exceptional and right in public service. Thank you for your service. Kari L. Brogy, Legal Management Assistant 4. She is from the District Attorney's Office with 25 years of service. Carrie has risen through the ranks to become the Management Assistant Legal 4, working with and for the District Attorney's executive management staff. Carrie has the institutional knowledge and legal acumen to answer questions and resolve issues among attorneys and investigators, and to liaise with all county agencies. Congratulations, Carrie. Thank you. Pamela Booker, Legal Processing Assistant 3 from the District Attorney's Office with 25 years of service. Pam is known to be extremely dedicated and hardworking. She's earned the respect of the attorneys and investigators alike. She is the go-to person, no matter how large or small the project. We appreciate your years of service. Thank you so much. Elvia Garcia, Accountant 2 with the Healthcare Agency, has 25 years of service. Elvia is a person who demonstrates her character by the love for her family and friendships she's developed at work. She's hardworking, and her dedication throughout the years is appreciated so much. Congratulations for your service also. Elsa Banuelos, Employment Specialist 4, with the Human Services Agency with 25 years of service. Elsa began her career with the county as an intake eligibility worker in 1992 and has promoted to various positions. During the past 8 years, Elsa has been an Employment Services Specialist lead worker for employment programs under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act programs. Throughout her career, Elsa has brought a sense of purpose, integrity, and a true desire to provide the best possible service to help our community. Find a better future by making career choices that make a difference. Thank you again, Elsa. Thank you for your service. Maria Caldera, Community Health Worker with the Healthcare Agency. She has 25 years of service. Maria started her county career with the public health clinics in 1992. In 1999, she transferred to California Children's Services as a community health worker. Maria recently shared that every day is so different and every case we touch is a challenge. I get a real sense of accomplishment when I help link a family to all the appropriate services and needed providers. Maria graduated from UCSB with a BA in sociology and a minor in Chicano studies. She excels in great customer service, and she makes sure that her clients are referred to all the available resources, and she's very much appreciated by her coworkers and clients alike. Thank you so much. Christina Coronado, Community Health Worker with the Healthcare Agency, has 25 years of service. Christina started working with the HCA in 1983 at various county clinic sites and programs. In 2000, she transferred to the public health as a community health worker. She's very professional, compassionate, and works effectively with coworkers and managers, as well as clients and providers. Her knowledge of Medi-Cal claims processing and her relationship with providers is invaluable to the Children's Service Program. She is well appreciated by the providers and the program for her thorough approach with complex claims. Thank you, Christina. Thank you so much. Sue Cherry, Administrative Assistant 2. Sue is with the Public Works Agency, and she does have her posse with her, yes. She has 25 years of service. Sue began her career with the county in 1992, working for the Director in Quality Assurance. In 1998, Sue came to the Public Works Transportation Department as an administrative assistant and has been responsible for recovering and collecting funds and reimbursement for the federal projects and disaster recovery projects. She was instrumental in ensuring that the department received every dollar of reimbursement funding we were entitled to. After the storms in 1995, 98, and 2005, Sue is a native Venturan and has one son, Donald, and two grandchildren, Ivan, 23, and Sandrine, 21, who live in Florida. Thank you, Sue, for your service. Thank you so much. For the next three, I'd like to ask Mr. Powers, perhaps, to come and... yes, Mr. Powers. Thank you. Stacy Ratner.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Sean. Well, it's wonderful to hear all these varied and important roles that everyone plays here in the county. It's just amazing, and all these positive, warm, professional people here. So I have the privilege of doing the 30-year service awards, and we'll start out with Stacy Ratner, Senior Attorney from the District Attorney's Office for 30 years of service. You know, it's wonderful to meet Stacy, actually, because last several decades I can remember picking up the newspaper, seeing headlines, and some complex, difficult case, and Stacy Ratner is handling it. It's just amazing. And what it says is that she's prosecuted the most complex cases in the office, including homicide, sexual assaults, crimes against children, property crimes, and juvenile justice issues. As a longtime supervisor, she's helping our next generation of prosecutors reach their full potential. Congratulations, Stacy, and thank you for your years of service keeping our community safe. Thank you, Stacy. Next up, we have Brenda Riley, an Office Assistant 3 from Department of Child Support Services for 30 years of service. Thank you so much. Brenda's dedication and commitment to the family we serve shows every day. She's efficient, productive, and hardworking, assuring the documents she processes are correct and filed on time. And something that a lot of folks in the public don't realize is our Child Support Services Department every year collects around $56 million that goes directly to children in our county. And Brenda's a big reason why. As a DCSS employee, Brenda has always been positive, kind towards others, and a joy to be around, creating a delightful environment to work in. Thank you, Brenda, for your 30 years of service. And last and certainly not least, Linda Joachim, a Sheriff's Services Technician from the Sheriff's Department for her 30 years of service. Thank you so much. Over the past 30 years, Linda has been a dedicated and loyal employee serving as a Sheriff's Service Technician with the Ventura County Sheriff's Office. She has spent the majority of her career diligently scheduling and supervising inmates during their allotted outdoor recreation time. We appreciate her dependability and her concern for the safety and security of the inmates as well as the safety of the staff at the main jail. Congratulations, Linda, and thank you for your dedication and service. And I would just say lastly, that's about 340 years of service, right? It's just amazing. But we thank you. I know that a lot of you, you're a humble group, but thank you for letting us recognize you for your service today. It's inspiring to your colleagues, members of our county family, and just thank you for serving as role models for all of us. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Woman power, huh? We're all females, yes?
Look at that, right? Women power, that's right. And we're going to take a class photo here, so if everybody can gather around.
And Mr. Chair, thank you again to all the 25-plus year employees. We're in good hands. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. First of all, find the cell phone that's pointed at you. All right, cell phones, are you ready? 1, 2, 3. All right, now it's my turn. Everybody. All right, 1, 2, 3. One more, please. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. You look at him. Yeah.
With no further ado, we will go to item number 20. There you go. Mr. Powers, next time I don't think you should ask me to delay him so much. So.
He's trying to frame me, Your Honor. You know that. Chairman Foy, honorable members of the board, Mr. Powers. I am Stephen Hintz, Ventura County's Treasurer, Tax Collector. I am here today to present to you the report of investments for the month ending December 31st, 2017. This is an all good news report. Everything that's supposed to be up is up and shows a continuing up line that will carry through into January. And I don't have to be an especially good predictor to know that, because I'm writing January's report today, so I already know some of the key numbers. The main thing is that the number of dollars of yield, of actual yield reportable, has gone up to $2.387 billion for December and will be $2.562 for January's report, and will be even higher than that. Well, I take it February is only a 28-day month, so it may not be significantly higher for February, but this is a product of a larger pool and rising interest rates. The stock market is in an interesting place right now, but the pool is pretty much insulated from what happens in the stock market. The only thing that the variations in the stock market do is they may change somewhat the prices of bonds and therefore somewhat the yield to be received by bonds, but only the ones that you buy during this period where the stock market has fallen and is very volatile. So it doesn't have any effect on the $252.5 billion worth of other investments that the pool has, just the ones that are going forward for the next few days. Our annualized percentage yield continues to rise, and as you look forward, if we held everything to maturity, that number would continue to rise almost to 1.5% annualized. The people who talk about interest rates are assuming that there will be 3 interest rate increases of 25 basis points this year, and they are beginning to talk about the thought that there will be 4, because all of the inflation indicators are rising and all of the governmental finance figures are rising, and it seems likely that unless there's an about-face in philosophy on the Federal Open Market Committee, that they will decide to continue using interest rates as a tool to control inflation. And that would mean 3 interest rate hikes at least, and maybe 4. As a matter of information, that would mean the current rate is 1.5. If they went to 4, that would mean the current Fed funds rate would be 2.5%. To answer a question that is often asked, that means that this may be the last good time to buy a house. Because interest rates are rising, and the first indicator, the first effect of rising interest rates is rising mortgage rates. So there are conflicting interests in these things. I believe that you'll be able to budget for more income from the investment pool during this budget period than you have in past years. As a side note, the city of Oxnard finally has deposited money in its account. They are, so far as I know, the last large cash resource that has not been tapped in a large way for the pool. So the pool is actually increasing because agencies are not taking money out as fast as they ordinarily have. It is not for me to guess why that might be, but ordinarily the pool shrinks in January, and this year it went up. So we'll see how that all works out.
Mr. Chair, I want to thank you because Mr. Molina mentioned that to us about he's now investing with us, and he's taking your schooling and your positive recommendations. Because I think Oxnard had several $1 million just sitting there, not doing anything.
I believe that this investment pool is a service that we offer to governments in the county of Ventura, and that what we
can do is tell them that it's here. We have often encountered government agencies who didn't know that there was a local government investment pool into which they could
And Mr. Chair,
deposit money.
I just want to, it's always great to hear this positive, information from you. And have a note here that we continue to maintain our AAAF/S1 plus, which is really great, from Standard & Poor's. And I will share that with the public, because of the professionalism that we have here with you and your staff and the committee, and I see your staff here too. I see someone that gives you all the good advice, right?
Thank you, Supervisor. We appreciate that. That rating is a great icebreaker when you are talking to somebody who is a little uncertain about what to do, pointing out that that the state's investment pool is not rated at all.
Mm-hmm.
And if it were rated, it would be rated at least 2 notches below ours. And even so, their yield is less than ours.
Mm-hmm.
Gives you a great opportunity to talk with governments that are unsure about what ought to be done with their excess funds. This is a receive and file.
Mr. Powers, would like to make a comment?
Oh, just that I hear so many positive comments from the local governments and schools and so forth about the opportunity to invest in the fund and have you and your team management, Your Honor. So we hear it a lot, and they're very grateful.
Thank you. I'll make sure the staff is aware of your comments.
I give Mr. Hintz a lot of bad time about a lot of stuff, especially when I'm chair. But over the years, you've really done a tremendous job, and I think you've done a great job bringing the rest of the community of different cities and everybody into this pool, and they benefited from it tremendously, and that's great. And so I get my hats off to what you've done and what you continue to do. So thank you very much. It's very important.
It feels good, of course, that our annualized yield has moved from the, say, 0.4% range to 1.4% in the last 12 months. That gives me a warm feeling, and I hope that it does for the participants in the pool.
When you hit those 2+, then we're going to be really excited. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and you talked about the interest rate and that we can count on that because, as you know, we'll be looking at property tax backfill from the state and then what happens the year after that and having to figure that out. So I appreciate that this is here for our community to be able to be to utilize if needed. And with that, I would like to motion.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Thank you for your patience.
I just hope it passes.
There you go. All right.
Thank you, Ron.
So we're going to go to a public hearing, adoption of resolution amending our county parks department rates, rents, and fee schedule. So we'll have a presentation. Here we go. Sir?
Good morning. Chair Foy, members of the board, Mr. Powers, for the record, Ron Van Dyke, General Services. I'm here today to conduct a public hearing for the rent and fee schedule to take effect tomorrow. That's unusual. Normally it's 1 April, and I'll define why we're doing that in the presentation. We reviewed our rent and fees and our specifically camping rates and determined that this year wasn't necessarily a year that we needed to raise rates to meet overhead, and we're keeping our rates consistent without any rate raise this year because of use patterns. One of the indicators that I was concerned about was our January use after the fires, because we took a pretty good hit in December because of the fires, and our January numbers were the third highest in the last 10 years. So we bounced right back from the fires for our camping revenue, which should sustain us basically through the rest of the year.
Which also may indicate local people in our sites because they need them, rather than that we've bounced back in terms of outside people coming in.
Right now, on that specific note you brought up, I'm only aware actually of one camper currently as a displaced fire victim in our system right now. There could be others, absolutely, but right now I'm only aware of actually one that we're monitoring.
Yeah, that's good to hear that they've found other places, but it's also good to hear got more campers and more motorhomes, and I heard some numbers that motorhome sales were through the roof. People really want to do that, so that's good.
Tapo Canyon set a record for January, had almost 80% occupancy for the month of January.
That's great.
It was pretty amazing.
I would just note that from the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, which is a consortium of a lot of the National Park Service, State Park Service, and all the recreation and park districts in that area, and they're all seeing a huge uptick in the amount of people out there in the parks, on the trails, and just not exactly sure why, but there is just a good 25% increase going on out there.
Which is kind of contradicts what the industry just said. There was a big industry for outdoor industry in Denver, and they're seeing their sales actually drop. So it's kind of a contradiction. One industry is seeing a drop, and the providers are seeing it go up. So it's kind of interesting.
It doesn't take too much to get out on a trail, just a pair of tennis shoes.
It doesn't.
Right?
Two significant changes I want to bring to your attention as part of this update. The first one is allowing the director an emergency declaration to waive our 30-day max stay limit. You may or may not have heard that City of Ventura had an issue with the 30-day stay limit with their hotels kicking people out at 30 days. Part of that is a residency law, not necessarily the bed tax. The city manager kind of cleared that up in an email. But that's pretty much why we have that 30-day rule. But county council has looked at the provision, and as long as we're following our current policies and not getting into lease agreements or rental agreements with the displaced that we're housing and follow our exact rules of what we do for any other camper, we're going to be fine. So it's just an extension that allows us to go past 30 days. And basically, there's no end date to that. They could stay a year or 18 months, whatever it takes for them to get back to their properties. That's probably the biggest provision. The other one is a paradigm shift, pretty significant paradigm shift from what we've been doing for decades. A couple of years ago, your board approved us to impose a 30-day max stay limit per park. With that, we've reassessed, and now we want to lift what we call our 7-day out rule that forces you, if you stay for 2 days in a park, you can't come back to any county park for 7 days, any county park for 7 days. The new rule, to give you a simple example, we'll have people come to try to get a beach park, Hobson, Faria, Rincon, and the inn is full. They'll come down on a Thursday or a Friday. There's no way they're going to get in, especially if they're out of town. So we'll tell them to go up to Foster Park, right up the road, and stay at Foster Park for the weekend if they want to be here for a week, and then come down to the beach. Well, our current rules with the 7-day out rule, they couldn't do that. This will now allow them to go up to Foster for the weekend and then shoot back down to the beach for the remainder of their vacation. It only applies, a 7-day lift only applies to inland parks. Does not apply to the beach parks because we have no problem keeping the inn full down there. We don't want people bouncing from park to park down at the beach. But if they want to go from Foster to Camp Comfort, then to Denison, they're more than welcome to do that, and we manage their stay based off of the 30-day rule and on our maximum occupancy during on-season and off-season of 60 days. So that's how we'll manage their stay period, so everybody has an opportunity to use the facilities.
Yeah. I appreciate you looking at, put something in, taking a hard look at it, see if it works for everybody, and then if it doesn't, you make some adjustments. So I appreciate you looking at that. Yeah, that's great.
And that's my brief.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you for not changing the filming charges. That is a large revenue to some of our unincorporated areas, and I know that they appreciate all that comes with filming in their area. And then I understand that KOA at Steckel Park is going to be rebuilding.
From our understanding, we have not gotten a termination. We've been in a lot of discussions back and forth with them. The last word I got from the operator there was that Cal Recycle is going to come in and clean up the property because of the vicinity to the river. It's an environmental hazard, so they got approval for Cal Recycle, which is a big burden off of his shoulders as an insurance company, because that was one of the hiccup areas that he was worried about. The insurance was going to pick up enough of the cleanup.
Okay, and then also I appreciate working with the Tolan Road landfill, using the parking to make sure that our traffic is taken off the beaten path for our constituents and so forth. I thought that was a great partnership to look out for everybody.
Yeah, that worked out well for us and for them, for that project, allow them. It was amazing the amount of trucks that they expected, almost 60,000 for the duration of this project. Having to go up to the toll and landfill and leaving those all on that grade would have been a very difficult process. We did have about 100 acres burned there, just under 100 acres, but it was all luckily in the upper section and not the developed section of the park.
So we'll still be able to develop on that park.
Yeah.
So I really do appreciate, and I do make a motion to receive and file.
Ron, they have avocados there at Tolan, right?
All of the surrounding farms and stuff, from what I can tell, we're okay.
It's in the upper part where they...
The upper part of the Tolan Park area, which is about 200 acres, the upper portion had some spot fires, and it was all brush, so it burned, and then the following day, another spot fire came up and burned another 10, 15 acres. It was just unfortunate, but we're lucky that it stayed in the upper section of the park. Firefighters did extremely well at containing all of our parks. We had fire crews literally in the parks for days.
And we're lucky it didn't go into...
Foster and at Camp Comfort.
We're lucky it
sitting there.
didn't light up the landfill. Yep, thank you.
Okay, Ron, appreciate that. This is a public hearing, so we need to open a public hearing. I don't see any comments. No comments, Larry? No? So we'll close the public hearing. Any additional comments from the
I'll
board?
second it.
We have a motion and a second from Supervisor Zaragoza. All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And then we'll go to Kevin. Item 23. Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Good morning, Chair Foy, board members, Mr. Powers. For the record, Kevin McGowan, Ventura County Sheriff's Office of Emergency Services. Thank you for the opportunity to brief your board on efforts made to assess the condition of our watershed and to enhance our collective preparedness. It became apparent early during the Thomas Fire that there would be significant impacts to our watershed, which would increase the risk of debris flows, landslides, and flooding if a significant rain event were to occur. Due to this increase in risk, immediate actions were taken to form a multidisciplinary watershed task force within the Unified Recovery Coordination Group. Organizations that formed the task force included the Federal Burned Area Response Team, which we refer to as the BEAR, the CAL FIRE Watershed Emergency Response Team, which we refer to as the WORT, and then also a local team comprised of representatives from the county and all the affected cities. This local team was made up of scientists, engineers, public safety personnel from the Sheriff's Office, County Public Works Agency, County Fire, city police and fire departments, public works agencies, and then general government administrators from city managers' offices and the CEO's office. First, I would like to take a couple of minutes in discussing how fire conditions and post-fire burn areas exacerbate debris flows. And the first image up there is just to depict the full burn scar, and all of us are familiar with, at this point, the true size and scope of the fire, but it encompasses over 281,000 acres of Ventura County and a portion of Santa Barbara County. So the picture on the right is an example of our hydrophobic layer, which is created in a post-fire burn area. And that's a kind of a core sample we took out when we were doing some field assessments on the ground. And the top layer of the dirt sample indicates that there's been this hydrophobic layer that has been created. So everyone asks me, what is a hydrophobic layer? And the hydrophobic layer is an effect that occurs when you have this hot burn going through the area, and it changes the chemical composition of the soil. And then in addition to that, the vegetation that's being burnt kind of produces these products that don't entirely go away from the fire, and those get absorbed into that top layer of the soil. And dependent upon that particular area of the fire and what was burnt and how hot it burned, kind of indicates how big or thick of a hydrophobic layer you will get. And what's important about the hydrophobic layer is it prevents absorption into the soil, and it creates this slip and slide effect on the top of the soil, and it doesn't allow the water to penetrate and becomes runoff and creates erosion. So that's one effect. Another effect is we lose the vegetation, which is important for our raindrop impact. So as rain's coming down, if you have vegetation, the rains impact the vegetation first, and they break apart, and you have smaller rain droplet impact on the soil. When you have no vegetation, the rain is impacting the soil directly and creates enhanced erosion issues. And then the third part is we lose our root structures underneath the soil. And that's a critical component in keeping the soil together. And so what you see on the left is a illustration from the USGS depicting what kind of occurs with a debris flow. And so you have a watershed. That watershed obviously can vary depending on where you are geographically in our county, but you have a steep slope, you have no more vegetation, you have this hydrophobic layer, and you get this intense rainfall, and all of that gets channeled into the slope, and you create this erosion, and then it starts picking up additional materials, even debris that wasn't completely burned off, such as the remnants of trees and bushes. And as it goes downhill, it gets bigger, and the force of it gets larger, and it creates these significant
Kevin, that becomes a
debris
big
flows.
slide then, huh?
Say that again?
It becomes a big slide.
Debris flows, mud flows, and then a landslide being a little bit different of an effect. And we'll talk a little bit about how landslides also are exacerbated by this condition. The key portion also contributing factor to a debris flow is the rainfall intensity. And so we should really be focused on the fact that it's not just general rain that causes debris flows. You really need an intense rain. And the USGS standard for that is 1/2 inch per hour. Rainfall intensity is really the bar for where you could start seeing an increased probability of a debris flow. And so as we continued to do our assessment early on while the fire was still burning, one of the first products that was produced was from the federal BEAR team, and it's the burn area severity map. And what the burn area severity map indicates is by color coding the overall risk profile of that particular geographic space. And red, the dark brownish color being the most highest risk area, and then the lightest colors being the lowest risk. And risk being a combination of both the probability of a debris flow occurring from that location and then the severity of that debris flow. So if you're in the lighter yellow color, it doesn't mean that you can't have a debris flow there. It's just that the full risk of that debris flow is lower than if you look at the areas that have that dark brown color. And so this is a great picture to illustrate that everywhere within our debris flow has the potential of a debris, or everywhere in the burn area has the potential of a debris flow, but that potential changes based on the geographical area, and that's based on the geological formation. So the geological formation that rests above Ojai is consistent of lots of large boulders and very rocky, whereas the geological features of the area by Foothill Road and above the city of Ventura are sedimentary sand, looser soil. And so that weighs into the severity portion of it.
Kevin, where does this map come from? Did
So-
your office create this, or where
No,
did this information come from?
The Burn Area Emergency Response Team, which is that federal team,
Thank you.
create that map. And it's based off of products that they get from, data that they get from satellite imagery, LiDAR, which is a light data imagery, and then other types of modeling that they go out even to the level of having people go out into the field and do the core samples.
Thank you. I appreciate that because I have a lot of techie people that call me about mapping, and so I wanted to make sure they knew where this data was coming from.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
that map is available on the USGS website, but then also on our locally hosted websites.
And
Thank you.
do you know if we can get smaller scale versions of that? In other words, one that just focuses on Ventura or just focuses on Upper Ojai or whatever. You can get expanded versions of those maps. Great, thanks.
And I have a question. When you were talking about the potential for debris flow, you were saying some have sand, more sandy areas, some have more rocky. Which are the more dangerous?
So the areas, and what's important about this map is it's showing where the origin of the debris flow or geological hazard is, not where it's going. but the dark red and brown are the more severe locations, and the lighter yellow colors are the less severe. But that would be the reason why the colors also different is because of probability. So if you use that half-inch per hour rainfall rate, some geological formations can absorb that rain differently than, like, say, a very rocky geological formation. So that's why the probability of one occurring is also factored into it. But using their data that we've also used, and I'll explain in a future slide about our modeling, you would look at this map and say everything north of the Ojai Valley has a higher risk profile than the stuff in the lower portion of the model.
And that's what this is showing, the more likelihood of having an event.
Likelihood and severity.
Okay, thank you.
So then all of that information that the federal government was collecting through USGS and other groups, NRCS, was also compiled and then consumed by that state team, in addition to the efforts that they were doing. And they created an additional product called the Values at Risk Map. And the Values at Risk Map took into account some other factors that the USGS model didn't, which was what happens when those debris flows or events start impacting values at risk. And those values at risk is a pretty broad general term to include houses, commercial buildings, but then all the way down to watershed structures, such as a culvert or a drain that goes underneath a road. And if that were to clog, there would be impacts to that road. And then what they did was, after they modeled those values at risk, they used hand drawings of shapes to identify downstream impacts. So the very prominent red features on that map indicate to them where potential flows could possibly go. But I would like to highlight that those were hand-drawn estimates based on data. And so we took that information and then refined it even more into what we use as red line channel modeling. And so in this map depicts, and they're a little bit difficult to see, they're very thin red lines that travel both east to west and north to south. And then we have the really prominent purple lines, which I'll describe in a minute as our notification and public information planning zones. But the red line channel modeling is a more precise tool. So we took all of these different components of data and information and then processed it through what our Watershed Protection District and Public Works Agency do in all of their flood preparedness. And we were able to model a little bit more detail. And so I'll bring to everyone's attention, if you look at zone 10, basically right under the number 10, you'll see a light shaded blue area. And that indicates the 100-year rain event for a bulk obstructed, and what bulk obstructed means is when your watershed facilities are being obstructed by debris. So if all of our watersheds within that red line had obstructions in them, and we were experiencing a 100-year event, you would see that level of flooding. And why that's important is because it gives us a more precise tool to evacuate people, notify people of the dangers and risks, as opposed to just using a really large red zone that was indicated in the WERT map.
Would it also be information to go out and make sure that area is declogged to the best of our ability to remove debris from the creeks?
Definitely. So it's the full, taking this information and then putting it in the operational context of both on the front side prior to a storm occurring, making sure all those channels and everything is clear of debris. But then while events are occurring, making sure storm patrols are out there focusing on those areas. We're evacuating those areas, pre-deploying fire rescue equipment to make sure that if an event occurs, that we can effectively rescue people. So this is where we start getting into the less data-driven imagery and going much more into the operational context of our planning phase. And then we took all that information and added one additional layer, which we call potential hotspots. And we call them out in the description of what they actually could produce. So just as an example, I'll bring everyone's attention to the La Conchita. So if you look to the middle of the page, far left, you'll see it says La Conchita area, potential landslide and debris flow. And so we know what hazard exists in that particular area, and then based on its zone and the different actions that we can put in place to protect lives and preserve property, we have a pretty focused process in place. And then we move into what we call our decision support tools for what we do in our real-time analysis and taking action. So when a storm is forecasted, that has a significant level of intensity, we'll activate the Emergency Operations Center, and we staff that Emergency Operations Center with representatives that were all during this planning phase. So our geologists, our hydrologists, and then all of our public safety agencies and public works. And one of the key tools we use is our really cutting edge, and I think something that our county should be very proud of, is probably one of the best rain gauge and stream flood systems that we have throughout the country. And this gives us the opportunity to really, in real time, monitor the intensities of rainfall in outlying jurisdictions even. And it gives us the ability to do targeted, precise evacuation orders, public information, and then the deployment of emergency response resources.
Kevin, so those gauges are up in the mountain someplace, and
every green dot that you see on this map is one of the county's rain gauges.
So that gives
That's
us
a part of that system.
Gives us the opportunity to share with the people that imminent, concerns are coming within 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. And the gauges are color coded. So these right now are showing blue because I picked the totals of the event that took place on the January storm. But if you were watching this rain gauge that night, you would see all of the ones in the left portion of the picture, which is Santa Barbara County. You would see all of those were turning red. And so when they turn red, that means that you're getting to those debris flow threshold. And so it even has the ability to warn us when we're reaching those threshold level events. And this network of stream gauges and rain gauges is tied throughout other counties too. So if we have a storm coming from the north traveling south, we can look all the way up to San Luis Obispo and see if they're having debris flow threshold rain. And then we can use our radar modeling to see if that rain intensity is going to persist through our county. And if it is, we should start evacuating these locations and we should start pre-deploying these types of assets.
Yeah, let me just say, Kevin, that real quick, that people have asked some questions in regards to, look what happened up there. Can this happen here? Of course, it always can happen in basins, but this is what we've been talking about, that you guys have taken such great steps with this technology to really be on top of it versus just widespread evacuations. And I think this is the key to this, and I think this gives the people confidence. So I appreciate this, and I'm hoping that this gets out in the paper and everything else, because this is what I think people are wondering.
And the apps for it too,
Yeah, because this here, I know you've spent a lot of time, energy, and money to make this happen, but it really gives people some confidence. So, thank you for it.
Kevin, who monitors? Is that Public Works that does that monitoring? Who does that?
So Public Works maintains this program, but it's available to the public. You could go to public-facing websites and actually see this data. But in the Emergency Operations Center, we have representatives from Public Works who are hydrologists and our geologists who are monitoring this in real time with the public safety agencies there also, that we can make these real-time decisions based on, storms are dynamic, and we all know, the National Weather Service and all of our predictive modeling will tell us it's going to rain, and then 3 days later it ends up being a sunny day. That's what we deal with when we're trying to predict and forecast storms. So what's important is that we're not just using forecasted storms, but we're using real-time information that's observed, whether it's observed out with people in the field, because that's another component. We don't just rely on the technology. For the January storm, we had deployed deputies up to Santa Barbara. One of the deputies was a deputy that was on both debris flows for the Camarillo Springs. So he had really good just institutional knowledge of what debris flow threshold rain really looks like and being in it. And the phrase he always used with me to describe it was, it's when it's raining so hard you can't drive. And that's something we like to communicate to the public is, what's a half an inch per hour rate of rain really look like? And if you were driving, you would probably stop and pull over until that rain stopped, because your windshield wipers wouldn't even keep up with it. So he was one of the people that deployed up to the Santa Barbara area, and was able to give us real-time information. Hey, this is what I'm seeing up here. Maybe we should, look at taking these types of actions. And then in addition to that, when we started seeing the intensities that were hitting Montecito, we deployed our county geologist up to La Conchita because part of that cell was going to clip the side of La Conchita. So we wanted to make sure we were observing. They were already under a voluntary evacuation, but we wanted to make sure we were observing real time what was taking place in case we needed to take action to do a mandatory evacuation. So it's really a sophisticated network of both technology and then humans being a part of that decision-making process.
I think that explanation you just gave is what gives people the confidence right there.
It is outstanding that we have all these monitors, and I know that they're really helpful to know when we have potential flooding, but being able to overlay that now with the understanding of where the debris is, too, is real important. And I recall seeing Mr. Pratt in the Emergency Operating Center, just reviewing this kind of stuff during the middle of the Thomas Fire incident. Well, we now have the ability to find out where we can localize where we anticipate an event, whether it's a flood or a debris flow. Do we also have the ability to really narrow our notification range? Because I know that was kind of an issue of, how broad amount of people get notified when it's a very localized event.
Great question. And it's a leading question for my next map.
Okay.
So this gives you the level of precision we can do with notifications. So this is the 33 map that depicts the areas right off of Casitas Vista and then Knight Road being to the north, which would, on this map, because north is oriented to the side, Knight Road would be right where the letter N is to the left of that. And we can target individual parcels of property with our VC Alert program. The tool that we use that has a little bit less targeting capability would be the wireless emergency alert system. And so there's strategies in how we use which tool we're going to use. When we're talking about precise, complex messaging, such as an evacuation order, our VC Alert program is really our standard tool that we use, and it has the capability to be very, very refined in its targeting, but then also very expansive in what we can say in the message. There's no character restrictions or anything like that. Whereas the wireless emergency alert, it's a great tool. It's like a blunt instrument. It's a great tool at getting people's attention, and you don't have to be opted into that program to receive it. It goes to the cell phones. So there's strategies in how we can effectively use it. But to answer your question about the precision of targeting, this map depicts as close of a level as we could, and we could say Division Bravo and Zulu need to be under mandatory evacuation, and Division Alpha would be a voluntary evacuation.
And we also have the ability in that to do the wireless cell phones and texts. Okay, thank you.
And in addition to all of this analysis that had taken place and pre-planning, there's been a considerable amount of work between the public works agencies in doing some really good corrective actions or additional maintenance at their facilities. So the top picture depicts all of the dead fire debris that Public Works has been removing from their facilities and watershed. The picture to the left is debris basin clearance, and we know that that's a critical aspect because in some of our most significant watersheds that had those really bright red areas, they all empty into these debris basins. To make sure that they're capable of holding that debris flow is critical for life safety and property preservation. And then the last picture on the bottom right illustrates some bollards that were installed. So after the fire, there was this channel, and because of the potential of debris coming into that, they've installed these bollards as an emergency protective measure so that it wouldn't impact the drainage system downstream. And then the probably one of the most significant parts of our entire watershed task force was to do community preparedness, because the community needs to be a part of this decision-making process and for us to be successful. So we've gone out and we've set up some town halls. We did the one most recently on Saturday. But the things I'd like to highlight is people should always have the general preparedness stuff, the go kits that we call them. Signing up for VC Alert, it's free. It's easy to do. It gives us the ability to contact you in those precise targeted ways. And then our Ventura County Emergency Information page, vcemergency.com, is really the go-to place people can go to for real-time disaster information. We also identified every house or property that was within this Thomas Fire burn area, and we're sending them direct mail. And the direct mail is pretty much a summary of everything I'm presenting today, but in a much more concise version. And it includes even the picture of the hydrophobic layer sample, the maps, and that will be going direct mail to everyone, including the dates of the future town halls. I wanted to throw up on VC Emergency.
I'm
up in
sorry,
the top.
to whom are we mailing it?
Oh, it's going to over 10,000 addresses that are all on the perimeter of the burn area that are within what we consider a debris flow threat. On the VC Emergency page, each one of those 10 zones, we've broken down into its individual page. So you can go up to the top left, select Zone 1 if you live, say, in La Conchita, and it will tell you what the active rainfall rate is in Zone 1. You can click on the little sun with the cloud on it, and your real-time rain gauge will pull up what that information is. And then if you scroll down, it gives you definitions of what a debris flow is and what the rainfall intensities are needed to contribute to that kind of an event occurring. So we're really trying to empower our citizens and our public to be informed, and then if need be, take decisions to make sure that their family and themselves are safe. And then I'll end it with that we're doing our community preparedness events. One already took place on Saturday, the Flood and Mud Expo, Preparedness Expo. Was really well attended, and the goal of that was to link people up with different groups of people to help determine if they need to do anything on their private property to help minimize impacts of debris flows. In addition to that, on February 7th, the City of Ventura is hosting a workshop that will focus on erosion control and fire-safe landscaping, and it's open to the general public. And then on February 12th, 13th, and 17th, there's going to be town halls that focus specifically on the public safety aspect of what we're dealing with in the watershed. So with that, I'm happy to answer any additional questions that you may have.
Just a quick question, Roy. Depending on rain levels this year, if we don't get them, we have our normal last few years without this last year, but normal. This will go on for next year too, because we don't get any vegetation growth and some things, won't it?
Yeah, great question. So even if you have like a normal rainy year, we tend to look at a burn area as a 5-year, like the post-fire burn area is a 5-year hazard. And then you elevate the rainfall thresholds based on the revegetation that's taking place. If we don't have a good rain year and we don't get revegetation, then we'll stay in what we call a first-year burn, which is that half-inch per hour intensity that could trigger a debris flow. If we had decent rain and we get revegetation and the natural rehabilitation starts, we could elevate into a second-year burn, and then you have a higher intensity.
So maybe 3/4 of an inch.
Exactly.
Something like that. Right?
And then it goes down or it goes year after year in that same kind of progression. And I would like to indicate, or allude to the Camp Springs event. That was 2 years after the fire, but we had stayed in a first-year burn severity because of that drought year was pretty intense that year. We had pretty much no rain.
Right.
And so we had debris flow threshold at a 1-year rate.
Okay, well, that's good. I just don't want people to think, oh, once summer's here, we're all done out of this thing. I appreciate that. That's good. Any other comments or questions?
Thank you. Turn my mic on. Thank you very much for supplying me detailed information for the executive leadership event I was at last week, where CSAC is very interested in finding out the lessons learned of this fire. I appreciate the maps, and so I'm going through all the websites trying to figure out where they are. And how we can make it as easy to find for our community would be really helpful, just as a note, because technology is great, and with VC Scanner and many other people out there looking for data, having our data available for our community is very important. One question I did want to ask you is to touch on the VC alert. Is there an option to, instead of opting in, to opt out? I know in many households, the home phone is no longer, and we have cell phones and all this other stuff. And so the question, I just wanted to ask for you, I know on the state level, they're looking at some legislation, but I didn't know on our county level, and you can come back if you don't have that answer, but I'm seeing what the benefits are, if there would be.
Thank you for the opportunity to come back and address that topic. So I'll definitely do some research into that issue. As of right now, it's an opt-in program, with the exception of landlines. We receive data on reverse 911 data, and then also yellow pages and white pages listed data. But you bring up a great point, is a lot of homes no longer have landlines. So having them opt in with cell phones and emails is critical. But as of right now, it's just an opt-in program.
And my experience with your department with the spring fire and that mudslide, you did a great outreach to those communities to ensure that they opted in. And that was a lot of effort on yours to make sure that communities have the information. And I'm really happy to see that we're doing the same thing on such a grander size. But that was one of the questions I just wanted to make sure we touch base on.
And we'll replicate at the town halls. We'll have people there with iPads, and you can sign up for VC Alert right there at the town hall.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Kevin. Excellent presentation. I want to thank you and the sheriff and also the fire department and public works and all the agencies that are working together, CO's office, Matt Carroll, and our county council. I mean, it's just endless, the amount of people that have helped us. Excellent presentation, and I think it's important for the community to understand what we're doing and how they can help themselves in the future. And I'm sure we haven't had any rain, but we might just get some rain here. You never know. And so I think it's important that they understand what they need to do and how they can help themselves. Thank you for an excellent presentation.
I just also want to, beyond the presentation, what you guys are doing is incredible. I've done some studying in emergency planning, and I just think this is a model, what you're doing with community outreach, communication, and the ability to get this wonderful data and how you're using the data. It really is a model, and I'm just really proud of the work that our county staff are doing. And also how quickly you're doing this too. I mean, it's just it's a model for, if not the state, the nation. It's just incredible, the good work that you're doing. So thank you.
Yeah, it just, District 1 in Ventura County is the disaster district between Lock and Cheat and all that other stuff. I just want to point one thing out. This idea of going out to the communities with these preparations for the debris flow and stuff did not start with this burn. But in Casita Springs, before this fire took place, we had another small fire there. And they were there the next week talking to everybody about being prepared. And that community was enormously grateful. And that was just on their part. Bang, they were out there. They, very proactive about doing this. So this is something it's really become part of the culture before the Thomas burn, and I just want to congratulate you and the sheriff and fire chief and everybody associated with it. Public Works, you guys are knocking it out of the park in terms of this, and the citizens in District 1 are really grateful for this. So thank you very much.
I was going to say, and to tie into that, the city managers had also asked for this information and presentation, so they're very grateful to have this coming into their communities. One last thing is just the notification. One thing that I thought was an eye-opener. So you got the VC alert, but if you see in an area there's only a couple people signed up, you can do that override, and maybe just touch on that real quick again, how long that takes and what that means.
So within VC Alert, when we're looking at the interface, we can pull up who's registered within that data, and we have the ability to then look at other tools such as emergency alert system or that wireless emergency alert system to notify those individuals. So ideally, we're doing it on the preparedness side where we're getting as many people to opt in as possible. But then when we're on game day and we're actually responding to that incident, we don't have time to sign people up. So that's when we look at those other targeted tools. And the wireless emergency alert, it tends to be a very effective tool in that. The challenge obviously being that there's bleed over in some of the areas. So we try to manage that system as best as possible.
But you can do that pretty quickly if you need to, right?
Yeah, we were during the fire, we were issuing from when the evacuation areas were being defined by the incident command post. We were able to issue on average those messages within minutes of being given that information.
That's great. That's great.
So the turnaround time from decision to notification is a very short time.
And that's
frame.
great, and that saves lives. So if I would just say, and you don't have to answer this because it's just, we are kind of a disaster county. We've done a lot of this stuff, and over the years, there's a lot of preparation. If you were, I'm sure you're going to do a debrief on all the things that went on. You're still in the middle of this and with that. And from our standpoint, it looks like Steve has said, you're hitting it out of the park. Is there anything else that we would do in regards to, I went down to the emergency, your place, you had all the TV, you had all the right stuff, you had everything going. But I don't know if that's, what else do you need? What else would, save lives? And I mean, I think the fire chief would tell you, we lost one or two in that fire, but, and nobody's life should ever be lost. But comparatively, it was a great success. Is there anything else that we can do? And like I said, that's not something for you to answer now unless you had some, you learn. I'm sure you learn every time as everybody does a debrief on this whole situation.
Yeah, I'll wait till we complete our after-action assessments, and then I'm sure we'll have an opportunity.
Because I think it's just an opportunity for us to say, we think you hit it out of the park, but there's a couple other things that could even be better. So,
well, somebody who's saying they hit it out of the park, the one thing I would say that I hear from the most people is that first night, the notifications and there are people that were sleeping, didn't get the notification. There are people that went to bed at 10:30 and wished that they would have been alerted that there was a fast-moving fire in the area and that they should stay alert. And until you do the after-incident thing, but I know that's the one thing that if you could alert 25,000 people and get them out in 2 hours, everybody'd like you to do it in 1 hour. And if you're at 1 hour, you'd like to do it in a half hour. So that's an improvement area. It was remarkable to get 26,000 people out in 2 hours, but it is the number one thing that I'm still hearing from people is the notification and the precision of the notification, the timeliness of it, and that's something that I'm requesting that you really include us in the after incident debriefings, but that's down the road when we get this all done. I'd like to definitely be involved in that conversation. I have actual documentation from a number of constituents that said this is my experience. I got my first email at such and such a time, and all of that. So it'd be helpful. Thank you very much.
And I don't want to focus anything on any of that stuff except your success. But and you guys have gotten better because I know that's what you do, is your thing. So anything we can do to help or be part of, I appreciate that opportunity. But just want to congratulate all of you, and I appreciate this is tremendous information, and I'm hoping everybody finds it. You got to go on the county website. You got to listen to what was said by Kevin today because this is really good and what we're doing. And even the people in the East County where I come from, or Linda, fires come, things happen. We know that, and so it's all this just shows where you've gone and what Public Works has done to help out, what fire's done, what the sheriff has done, and this whole community working so well together. I think gives them a comfort of that safety. Not that it's never tough when a fire happens or anything. So.
Can I make one comment? I know I focused on the VC alert, and I just want to be amiss. I mean, if someone's phone can be off, they could no electricity and they didn't figure it out. But I really appreciate training our citizens because really that's it. Is when they're in an emergency situation, what do they do? And I think that's something that is very important to make sure that we're taking care of our private property. Understanding if I didn't get a VC alert and I have fire on two sides of me, maybe I should evacuate. There are certain things that we need to build in as just common sense. These are things we need to do, and I appreciate your effort to everyone to make sure our community is as safe as possible. And we also need to take ownership of our own self to make sure that we are responsible. I know that many of you helped other people in this evacuation out with our community and so forth, and that we we have these things that we can build in, but also we have to take the ownership on ourselves too. So thank you everyone for the effort.
And it was not too long ago when we didn't have this ability to call people and, reverse 911 essentially on the VC alert. So it's great to have that tool and that of areas that could be more saturated. That kind of information I think would be good for us. And I really like the idea of just double downing and getting more people signed up so they can get that call, they can get that text, and that's something we as a board can do with our areas.
It's important to note that we don't just rely on that one tool or technological tools. We, as best as we can, we deploy first responders to those areas to do in-person notifications also, and that was a huge effort within the Thomas Fire, was areas that potentially had cell reception areas. We had deputies and firefighters out there doing in-person notifications.
And Kevin, this is going to help us do in other potential disasters. This is only maybe one or two of maybe a couple or three that potentially could happen. I won't name them.
You never know.
But that'll help us.
So again, thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Thank you
And all the other teams. I know Barry and his team back there all worked after the fire, and all the people are doing. I appreciate it all. So, thank you. Hydrophobic.
Hydrophobic.
We have a motion to receive and file this?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. So we've got another public hearing here. Number 35 in closed session real quick. Okay, not 24. Okay, closed session first. We'll be right back, hopefully. After these messages.
I don't understand why he's such a strong supporter. So.
Now that Kelly has kept us an hour late, Kelly, we're trying to start. All right, we're ready to go. All right, we'll come back to our 11:30 item number 24, our event venues.
Good afternoon. My name is Rhonda McKay. I'm an assistant county counsel, and I'm here on behalf of the Planning Division to present proposed amendments to the non-coastal zoning ordinance, and in particular, amendments to the provisions dealing with the process for obtaining conditional use permits to hold temporary outdoor events. I want to start by explaining that these changes were precipitated by concerns about whether our ordinance on its face granted too much discretion to county decision makers to grant or deny conditional use permits for outdoor events based on a perceived agreement or disagreement with any message or expressive content that might be associated with such events. And I want to make clear that concerns about what our ordinance says on its face can exist regardless of whether the county actually applies the ordinance in a lawful and appropriate manner, which it historically has done and will continue to do. But you might just think of this as a way to tighten the language of the ordinance to make very clear that the county does not grant or deny conditional use permits in a discriminatory or unlawful way. And there are checks in the ordinance that help ensure that the county will continue to exercise its discretion in an appropriate manner. So there are three changes that are being proposed today. And we are asking that these be proposed as an amendment to the non-coastal zoning ordinance going forward. This is not a temporary or an emergency amendment. So first of all, the definition of the temporary outdoor events, it's right up here at the top of the slide, section 8102-0. So currently, temporary outdoor events are defined to include weddings and religious revival meetings. What we are suggesting is to modify the heading of that definition to include the word receptions and to add language including the word receptions and similar events that are not accessory to a principal use in the definition of a temporary outdoor event, and again, to remove the words weddings and religious revival meetings. And we think that this wording better captures what it is that the county is trying to regulate and better reflects the fact that the ordinance is not targeted at regulating protected expression. Any questions about that proposed amendment? Great. The next one is a change to the permit approval standards in section 8.
I do have a question regarding the accessory
Yes.
accessory use. If you're getting paid to have an event at your place, would that be accessory to your main use?
For the most part, if you are being paid to have an event, it's probably not going to be an accessory use. But in making that determination, we really have to look at what the primary use of the property is to see how the paid event might factor in. So, for example, if you have a property with a vineyard and you are hosting a commercial event that has something to do with that vineyard, that could be possibly an accessory use. So we really have to look at that on a case-by-case basis.
But generally, if you have a private residence and you're renting your private residence out for a wedding, that would not be considered an accessory use generally.
Generally, that's right.
Great.
Generally, a private residence that is being rented out for commercial weddings on a routine basis is probably not going to qualify as an accessory use.
So if you had a vineyard and you're renting it out for private use, would that be an accessory to the vineyard's use?
Again, it depends on what it is. If it's a wine tasting, for example.
Let's say it's weddings. You're having wedding receptions at your vineyard. Would this be considered accessory to the, and you're getting paid for it, would that be considered accessory to the vineyard?
My understanding is that would not be considered an accessory use. That is not a use that's accessory to the primary use. An accessory use is defined in our ordinance, and it's those uses that are normal and regularly associated and reasonably associated with the primary use of the property. So if your property is a vineyard with a residence on it, hosting commercial weddings is not going to be an accessory use.
But having your vineyard group come, that would be accessory.
Again, it may depend on intensity of use.
Okay.
If you had it every weekend, for example, the planning division is going to have to look at that and see whether they believe it qualifies as an accessory use. It's really a determination based on reasonableness.
Okay.
So the second proposed amendment is to the permit approval standards in section 8111-1.2.1.1. And the change here, this section sets forth the standards that must be satisfied in order to find that someone qualifies to have a conditional use permit granted. And the addition that we are proposing here is putting a statement at the end of the standards to make clear that in analyzing the preceding standards, the county decision makers must consult and consider the relevant factors identified in Article 9 of the non-coastal zoning ordinance. And the relevant factors are routine land use factors that are set forth elsewhere in the ordinance. They include things like fire hazard, topography, noise, traffic concerns. These are things that our planning staff already routinely considers in making its recommendations on whether to approve or deny a conditional use permit. The change that's happening as a result of this language is that county decision makers can't just rely on the staff report. They must actually consult and consider all of those land use factors or the applicable land use factors in connection with their decision. And what that does is it ensures that in analyzing the standards and in using their discretion to analyze those standards, that discretion is cabined by directing the decision makers to the specific factors that should guide and inform those decisions. Questions about this second change? Great. Okay, so the last change is to the application review section of the non-coastal zoning ordinance, section 8111-2.5. And the change that we are proposing here really just adds language to make explicit that the time limits set forth in the California Permit Streamlining Act apply to decisions on conditional use permits and plan development permits. And we think that the Permit Streamlining Act generally governs already our conditional use permits, because the definition of what the Permit Streamlining Act applies to is very broad and includes basically any intensity of use, which would make it applicable to conditional use permits. But to eliminate any doubt that we are not adhering to these time limits, we're recommending that you adopt this revision, which makes it explicit that we are complying with these time limits when we decide conditional use permits. Questions about that last proposed change? Okay, so what we are asking is that you hold a public hearing on these amendments and then take the action set forth on page 1 of the board letter, which is to certify that you have considered this information and any public comments, and to make the findings requested and adopt the proposed amendment to the ordinance.
Okay, we heard all that. It's a public hearing, so let's open the public hearing. Do we have any comments on it? Nobody wants to speak? We'll close the public hearing. Any other comments, questions?
Actually, I just wanted to say thank you very much. It's important that we are updating our ordinances and policies so that they adhere to today's standards. And so I know it takes a lot of time to do this, but I do appreciate planning's efforts to make sure that we are as up to date as possible.
And I also appreciate the change. I think it brings more clarity and understanding on some of the where it is acceptable and where it isn't. So thank you.
I just want to point out one thing for the benefit of, I know the public's fairly interested in this, the change that we're making here. Imagine if we use the word mixed race wedding in our ordinance. The courts would say, you can't say that, right? Well, by saying wedding, you're saying something about a message, right? A wedding is a message, according to court and stuff. So that's what we're doing. We're fixing something that somebody could inappropriately use if they had nefarious intent, right? Thanks.
Yeah.
Again,
as well as what's accessory to a particular use. We needed to clarify that too.
Okay. And I want to thank you for amending this ordinance. I think it's important that we clarify that for the public, so for the proper use, whether it's residential, commercial, and so forth. And thank you for that.
All right. Motion to approve. Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you, Rhonda, for the work. Appreciate it. Vote. All right, we've got a few more items to go through. We're going to go to item number 27. Recommendation by Supervisor Bennett, support AB 1794. Sir?
Thank you very much. I'm bringing this at the request of all the stakeholders involved in the Ojai Basin Groundwater Management Agency. It's a really simple thing. Most of you have seen in the newspaper, Golden State Water was taken over by Casitas. Golden State Water had a vote on the board of Ojai Basin Groundwater Management Agency. That board was created by state legislation. So we need to have this, Assembly Member Lamone is carrying a thing to clarify who gets that seat. And so she has asked that we make it clear that we're in support of this also.
So just sitting board members is what's going to change?
What's that?
The sitting board members.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So I'd like to move the recommended action.
So we have a
second.
First and a second by Supervisor Zaragoza, and vote. Thank you. So that passes, and then we go to item 28.
And item 28 is a very informal thing. We're just trying to give it enough that we can use this essentially for grant applications. But those same agencies and other water agencies up in the Ojai Valley, we're starting to convene meetings to see where we have common interest and overlapping interest. In one of the areas where we have potential overlapping interest is in applying for a grant. And we all know, we've seen that with what Sue Hughes has done, et cetera. We've been able to get grants easier if they are grants that appear to, that not just appear, that they are regional in terms of support. So this is an Ojai Valley effort to try to bring disparate, sometimes very small water agencies, Minor Oaks Water, Ventura River Water. It is informal. It's not going to commit us to anything in terms of money or anything else. If we decide that we want to spend money on this thing, that would be a whole separate thing. This is just to give our sort of stamp of approval, and it actually says in the MOU of this is an informal organization, all right? And, but it gives us enough that we can put it on some letterhead and say this is a letterhead of this informal organization. We're applying for this grant. And we actually had the grant writers come and give us what they recommend as the best language to increase your chances of making your grant look attractive. So
Okay.
That's a recommended action.
So we have a motion by Supervisor Bennett.
Can I ask a couple questions on this
Sure,
for
I'm sorry.
education for the public and so forth? I know we already get the grants from the IRWM, correct me if I'm wrong, Sue. And so I'm trying to understand, this new association is put together, but it's not binding? Because don't you also have the Upper River or the Ventura River Watershed Council? And all those members are on that as well. So what does this do in addition to what we currently have? Because the lessons learned, what works and what doesn't work, how is this new structure of this new group going to be more beneficial? Or I'm not understanding the flow of
Thank
how
you.
things work.
Ventura River Watershed Council is made up of all stakeholders that are interested in the Ventura River watershed.
Okay.
This is made up of people that are providing water, people that are involved, government agencies that are involved in the water. So it's the city of, so it's just government agencies that are somehow involved in the provision of water. City of Ojai, Ojai Basin Groundwater Management Agency, Casitas Municipal Water District, Ventura River Water District, Miners Oaks Water District. That's the difference. That's just the people that are involved in this, that provision, rather than the Ventura River Watershed Council. You've got the Sierra Club and, Surf Rider and, Venturans for,
Right.
all that. So it's much broader, and that group would be much less likely to come forward with a grant for a particular water project, right? And the grant is not, quite frankly, what I think is the best interest that the County of Ventura has in this is it's just getting these agencies to all talk. We're having a critical water crisis in the Ojai Valley.
Mm-hmm.
Lake Casitas is going down. What should be the unified policies? When Lake Casitas goes to stage 5, what should be the policies with the Ojai Basin Groundwater Management Agency? And what should be the policies of Miners Oaks and Ventura River? Well, they can all decide those separately, or we could have a meeting where we talk about it informally, just so everybody knows, hey, Casitas is getting ready to do this, and maybe we should do that. And, hey, we'll do this if we have some confidence you're going to do that. I'm trying to have these agencies feel comfortable talking with each other and communicating with each other. That's really the big thing. So that's
Okay.
that's separate.
So then is the Ventura County Watershed Protection District included in that as well?
Through the County of Ventura being a signature on this, yes.
Okay. And so our departments will be on there, or just a representative of the Board of Supervisors would be there?
Right now, I'm the one there, but again, it's informal. If we had, like we're going to talk about Arundel removal,
Mhm.
Watershed Protection District would be there, because
Okay.
we're not going to talk about Arundel removal without Watershed Protection District.
Okay, so the suggestion is to make sure that we have this MOU so that we are all collaborative, but we don't have any legal
But it doesn't create any
agreement to this, so that if there is anything that Ventura County has to provide, we have to be reviewed back to this board.
That's right. This is not like a joint powers agreement or anything like that. Right? It's just informal conversation.
Okay.
It's acknowledging that we're having an informal conversation.
Okay, yeah, I was looking to see if any of our departments had reviewed this, and when I was checking, they hadn't known, so
Yeah.
I was trying to understand
Sure.
how Ventura County was
Well,
represented.
And quite frankly, this kind of sheds light. We've had 2 meetings. They both have just been, hey, why don't you guys come down, let's talk. And then we did the second one, hey, why don't you come down, let's talk. And that was like, well, maybe we ought to sort of announce we're doing this. That's part of what this does. This is like that announcement. We're having these informal talks.
Okay.
And in some kind of public way, it's an acknowledgement that the city of Ojai acknowledges, we acknowledge, et cetera, that there are these informal talks.
And the reason why I ask is if there's another way of getting grant money and they're specific, I'd love to know.
Well,
So-
quite frankly, most of our grants are going to go through the broader regional thing. I mean, what usually happens is those grants from different areas then get piled together into sort of that broader thing. And that's actually probably the better way normally to get grant money.
That's what I
But to the
thought.
extent that somebody identifies something that they need to apply for specifically for Ojai, they could
Okay,
theoretically.
so the reason why I was asking is Assemblyman Lamone is on this, so I didn't know if she's trying to push a bill to this one region earmarked to get a certain amount of money or something like that. So that's why I was asking.
She and I were basically asked to try to bring these groups together to talk more.
Okay.
But it is a good technique that could be used in other areas of the county when necessary.
Okay. Thank you.
I didn't know if you were paid to drag that on or not.
No,
Just kidding.
not at all. I'm just trying to learn here on the board.
Good.
Good questions.
Appreciate that. Very good questions. All right. Item number 29, recommendation by Supervisor Long. So we're going to receive and file, taking a position on AB 1250.
Yes, and I will not talk long on this, but I want
Thank
to
you.
make sure that this is in our knowledge base. AB 1250, we've already written a letter of opposition on this bill, and you received from BHE, our lobbyists, the up-and-coming information on this bill as it sits in the Senate, and that there is rumors that this bill will be moving somewhere if this bill doesn't come through, and how important it is that our counties are cooperating with nonprofits and other businesses to ensure the services for our communities. The cities were excluded out of this bill late in the push, and there were some other questions, but I wanted to make sure that based on the conversations we are having with CSAC and with our lobbyist BHE, that this is on top of mind, because at a later time, you might be asked to oppose or to support a bill coming up. Right now, there's like I said, the AB 1250 is on the floor of the Senate. We're hoping it doesn't move forward at any time, but it needs to be on our radar. So I didn't know if there was any questions, but again, you did receive an email from our lobbyists. We have more information if you'd like. I get more and more updates, and we are trying, as our state and federal information comes to our board, that we share it with all to make sure everyone is educated on what is up and coming. So that is just the receive and file.
Good. Well, thank you, because this would have the greatest devastation to our county if something like this passed, so it'd be great. Thank you.
Yes, it
Okay,
would.
we have a motion and a second to receive and file.
Second.
I think that's our last item for here. We're going to go into closed session. Leroy, do you expect any announcements out of closed session?
We do not expect any announcements.
What do you got, one more something? Need a vote? Did everybody vote? Oh, there you go. Is that it? You done? We're good? Huh? Closed session. Thank you.